Everybody be seated, please. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 9th, 2019 St. Tammany Parish Planning Commission meeting. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Ms. Casaubon? Here. Mr. Lauren?
Here.
Ms. Parker?
Here.
Mr. Richard?
Here.
Mr. Willie?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Baggert? Here. Mr. Fitzmaurice? Here. Mr. Doherty? Here. Mr. Drum? Mr. Randolph? Here. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Lambert, would you like to say something about our new employee?
Yes, I would like to. I would like to take a minute to introduce our new planner, Erin Cook. She just joined our team, and you will be seeing her at the Planning and Zoning meeting.
All right. Welcome. Next, before we talk about the public announcements, I believe Commissioner Richard would like to take a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take a moment. We lost a member of the community today, a close friend and a dear activist in our community, and ask that you keep Willie Peretti and her family in your prayers. She was a great lady and did a ton for St. Tammany, and she's going to be missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public announcements. Please turn off all phones and pages. If you don't like the decision of this commission, we have appeal cards that you can submit. Also up here, we have speaker cards, which I've already received quite a few for tonight's meeting. And during the public speaking cases, we'll have 10 minutes for each side, 5 minutes for rebuttal. And afterwards, if you're finished with your case and you don't want to hear the rest of the cases, please exit the building quietly. Let's please stand for the invocation by Commissioner Randolph and the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Lauren.
Gracious Father, once again we come to you as humble as we know how to say thank you for all the blessings you bestowed in our lives. Lord, you allowed your grace and mercy and favor to be upon each and every one of us this day, and we thank you for allowing us, Lord, to come to this place tonight. We ask that you continue to bless this commission with the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to make the best decision for all. And we thank you for the audience. And Lord, we ask that you bless our families, continue to be with them. And we ask a special blessing upon Ms. Willie Peretti and her family. Be with them and be with us all. And all these blessings we ask in your holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the commissioners had a chance to read the minutes for last month, and would like to make any comments or concerns or changes? I'll bring it to Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I move approval.
Commissioner Fitzmaurice moves for approval. Commissioner Randolph. Second. A second by Commissioner Randolph. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Staff, do we have any requests for postponements yet tonight? None? Okay. That makes it easy. I think as chair, I'm going to move up old business first tonight. So let's go to the last case. Under old business, resolution number 17-092, entering Parish right-of-the-way for Roger Drive. Request to enter Parish right-of-the-way for the purpose of gaining access to the property. The debtor is Dentry Crawford. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable Gene Belisario, Ward 8, District 9. Staff, any comments on this?
Yes, sir. The above referenced resolution was adopted on September 12, 2017. The resolution states that the petitioner must submit all documentation within 6 months from the date of adoption. The petitioner was granted an extension of time on July 10, 2018, to furnish documentation by January 10, 2019. The petitioner has not furnished all documentation required within the 6-month period and is requesting an additional extension of time. There's a letter attached for reference dated March 22, 2019. Since the time has expired for the petitioner to furnish all documentation, the following action is required by the Planning Commission to allow the petitioner to proceed with the project. Number one, extend adoption date to April 9, 2019, thereby extending 6 months submittal of documentation to November 9, 2019, and the completion date to April 9, 2021. Department of Development Engineering has no objection to this extension, sir.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here tonight? Yes, sir. Come up and state your name and address, please.
Dentry Crawford, 110 Troy Drive, Slidell.
And you're just looking for an extension of time.
Everything takes time. I've had
No,
to go,
that's fine,
I've
but-
been jumping through hoops with
But
this.
no, that's fine, but you're just looking for an
We
extension
just
of time.
got the paperwork 2 weeks ago. We just got the last paperwork.
Right, so you need the extension of time for 6 months, is that correct?
Hopefully. I
Okay.
still gotta get on the waiting list for that.
Okay,
asphalt.
that's fine, that's fine. Is anybody in the audience against this extension of time for this? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Casabon for 6 months?
Yes.
For 6 months. Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will second it. Do you think you can get all this completed within the 6-month period? I mean, it's been 2 years.
2 years. I just got paperwork 2 weeks ago from the engineers finishing it up. Now I gotta take it to the contractor. Hey, I've been waiting. What do you think, how you think I feel? 2 years, this has been bouncing around.
All right, I'll second it,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
I have a motion to extend for 6 months by Commissioner Casabon and a second by Commissioner Doherty. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Hopefully you'll get it done in 6 months. Thank you. Okay, next, entering parish right-of-the-way servitudes, easements, and Tammany Trace. Entering the parish right-of-way, 5th Street between Adams and Jefferson Avenue, Tammany Hills. Request, entering the parish right-of-way for the purpose of installing water, sewage, and roadway improvements. The debtor is Advance Mortgage Company, LLC. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable David Fitzgerald. General location is on 5th Street between Adams and Jefferson Avenue, Covington, Louisiana, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
I have no more to add besides what you read already.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Paul Marone on behalf of Advance Mortgage Company, LLC, as well as the Waiver family. This is a standard request dealing with an unopened right-of-way in Tammany Hills subdivision. As you know, you've seen these many times over the years. The Waiver family, through Advance Mortgage, owns Square 15, which abuts this unopened right-of-way. We would request permission to enter that right-of-way for the purpose of constructing out the roadway and roadside drainage. We've reviewed the provisions of the ordinance provided by the staff, have no objection, and will comply with each of those. So we would respectfully request your approval of our request to enter the right-of-way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience wants to speak against this right-of-the-way servitude? If not, I'll bring it up to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
I make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Lauren makes a motion to approve. Commissioner Baggert. Second. I have a second by Commissioner Baggert. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. No revocation reviews, minor subdivision reviews. 2019-1351 MSP, minor subdivision of 20.859 acre parcel into lots A1, A2, A3. The owner is Crosby Development LLC, surveyor is J.V. Burks and Associates. Parish Council District Representative is Honorable Michael Lorino Jr. General location is on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain, west of North Lake Drive, Mandeville, Louisiana, Ward 4, District 4. This case was postponed 1 month at the February meeting and then postponed again at the March meeting. Staff?
The applicant has submitted a maintenance agreement and a notarized hold harmless as required. The following revisions to the plat must be made before the plat can be recorded is to extend the 35-foot access servitude and turnaround up to Lot 3A, and also to include a notation on the survey plat. The notation was sent to us, however, it has to be on the survey plat, and to include number 3, the private drive calls. I'd like to bring to your attention an email that Mr. Crosby sent me, and I distributed a copy of it, where he's requesting approval to have the road construction up to Lot 2 and just a 10-foot servitude up to Lot 3. So at this time, we'll leave that in the hands of the of the Planning Commission to make to vote for or against this request.
Thank you. Is there somebody here to discuss this case? Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
John Crosby, 1 Sanctuary Boulevard, Mandeville, representing Crosby Development.
And I see with the new plat that you actually have the turnaround in between lot A1 and A2 now. Is
Correct.
what you intend on doing.
That's our core permits and federal and state permits to develop that land was only for 2 lots. That's really all we were asking for. The third lot was really just kind of a conservation area, and we built it. We reclaimed some lake and put an angled buffer there to prevent erosion. That was recommended to us by our engineers. That lot is never intended to be developed or it doesn't have permits to be developed. So all we want to do is actually build a road just to serve A1, A2, and just do a maintenance right away to A3. That's all we're asking for. I understand the administration's concerns about having parcels and not having proper access, but that's not a developable or buildable lot at this point. We submitted a recommended revised note to put on the plat to address that. I don't know if everybody got copies of that or not. There was an email I sent, I think, Friday.
I don't believe so.
But it was just to state, I could read it real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
What I was requesting is that the note on the plat say that the private drive to be constructed within the 35-foot access prior to issuance of any permit for A1 and A2. That's, in other words, that's the standard language you use because we're not building the road right now. It's not there yet, and you're going to approve the two lots. But however, prior to any issuance for a building permit on A3, the 35-foot access servitude must be in place, and a private drive extending to A3 must be constructed along with appropriate turnaround. That's a note we want to put on the plat to call attention to the fact that that lot is not ready to be developed, and we don't want to build a road that far anyway. We just want to stop it at A2. I know there's a lot of people from Lewisburg here, and we've had discussions with them, and we're all on the same page with this. It's rare that you have the developer and the homeowners on this agreeing on everything, and that's the case here. So we understand why the staff recommended what they did. However, we're asking the commission to, I guess, overrule that, for lack of a better way to put it, and approve the plat the way we submitted it, with only the 10-foot access to A3. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if there are any commission members.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak in favor of this subdivision? Yes, sir, your name and address, please.
David Lawton. I live at 220 Fountain Street in Mandeville, here on behalf of the Lewisburg Civic Association. We're in favor of the plat as submitted. We're against the staff comments for reasons I'll talk about in about the next 2 minutes if I can have a couple of minutes to describe it. Because we think that sets a bad precedent for this particular area. This is, we have let's see if we have some. Maybe somebody give me. Do you need help? Yeah, why don't you do that? Yeah, why don't you click here?
And again, you are speaking in favor of this.
I'm speaking in favor in the
Okay.
plat as submitted, but
Right.
against the comments of the staff, which made suggestions. And the reason for that is the staff is trying to make this into an extension of North Lake Drive.
Well,
And-
let's don't bring up the staff about this, because realistically, what it clearly states here is their comments about this, and then it says, to be able to do this, we would have to have an overriding rule, that's all. So it's not a matter of going after the staff, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm not going after them, I just disagree.
Okay,
that,
that's fine.
That their proposals are necessary.
Okay.
All right, and that's what it is. There's a picture you can see there of the area in question, and you'll see that the distance from Holly.
Expand it a little bit.
Yeah, expand it a little bit. On the right side is where Holly runs into North Lake. The long line is the North Lake Drive. Lake Pontchartrain's on the bottom. And you'll see the empty lots on the left, which is Mr. Crosby's lots, have already been filled in, all right? The distance from Holly Street to the edge of what's now the turnaround, the cul-de-sac, is about 1,000 feet, all right? And that's where the end of the North Lake Drive is right now. Now, the subdivision regulations say that you shouldn't have dead-end roads, but if so, you have a cul-de-sac, and they shouldn't be more than 700 feet. And there can be exceptions given by the Planning Commission as to those. But our position about this is, why should you do it when it's not necessary? You shouldn't start making exceptions, especially on North Lake Drive, for reasons we'll talk about in a minute. But, so let's say that we don't want to extend North Lake Drive any farther than you have to. Now, looking at what Mr. Crosby has submitted, it's a driveway. Now, a driveway is not a street. The definition of driveway in the code, is, yeah, go to the dead end. Yeah, driveway. Next one's driveway.
Next slide or further.
Next slide. Yeah. A driveway serves two lots. It's defined as differently from a street. If you get into 3, it says then all the specifications of a street. So Mr. Crosby, his development company, has said, look, we just want a driveway. He's not just saying that now. He said that to the Corps of Engineer. He said, I'm not trying to make an access road. All I'm trying to do is put a driveway in here to serve 2 lots, all right? So that would comply with the code, it would comply with the 7, wouldn't interfere with that, it would not extend North Lake Drive, and we're totally in favor of that, all right? But what we don't want is something going to the 3rd lot, access to this 3rd lot. The 3rd lot is, as Mr. Crosby said, for restoration. And when you look at the picture that we had before the first one, let's take a, well, you can take a,
Go back to the first.
yeah, go back to the first one. You'll see, as it's developed, that little triangle at the end, that's the restoration lot. It's not a lot to be built on. It was never intended to be built on. Crosby Development spent, 2 or 3 years talking to the Corps of Engineers saying, we'll use this as mitigation, restoration. We're not going to build anything on there. We have no intention of building on it. And the significance of that is you don't have 3 lots here in a subdivision, because the definition of subdivision says you have to intend its use, right, for residential or commercial use. That's not intended here. It's intended solely as a reservation, a restoration lot. So you have just 2 lots. You can have a driveway. There's no need to extend North Lake Drive at all. The comments that are proposed by the staff are putting this in a position of extending North Lake Drive as a street, and that's what we object to. So our position is, should keep this as submitted by Mr. Crosby, simple. It's a driveway, it serves 2 lots, and that's it. No other condition should be on there. And I'll take another 30 seconds. I think other people may want to speak as well. The problem here is a precedent too, because we know there's 6 lots beyond this, and the owner of those 6 lots, it says he wants to seek access coming through there as well. So we are looking at a precedent. You're starting here, and if you sit there and say, well, we can extend by a few lots here and a few lots there, a street that's already 700 feet long, or excuse me, 1,000, and extend it, all of a sudden you're going to be looking at 2,000 feet of a dead-end road, and you're going to be stuck with the next developer coming to you, which he's already filed suit against Mr. Crosby to try to get access. He's going to be coming to you and saying, look, you did it for them, do it for us. So our position is, and I think it should be the position of the commission is, look, this is a good place to stop right here. This is the terminus of, this is the end of North Lake. You can have a driveway, but that's it. We're not extending North Lake Drive any farther. And that's the way, I'll just,
Thank you. Yes, you still have 3 minutes left.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Cove Gary, Geary. I'm a resident of Lewisburg at 149 Mulberry Avenue in Mandeville. And just want to make a couple of points. I mean, I think just briefly to help the Planning Commission, can we just, a show of hands of people who are residents of Lewisburg and Golden Shores who are here to support Mr. Crosby's plan as submitted? I don't know that you need to count them, but there's a pretty good number here.
Okay.
And I want to show the commission a letter that November 20, 1998, we've been fighting the efforts to develop the lots to the west of Crosby for over 20 years. And I've got 4 file cabinets in my office of it. But this is a letter that the engineer, the parish engineer at the time, John Shires, wrote to Lane Carson, the district attorney. And he was talking about this proposed development to the west of Crosby Development's lots. And among the things he says is he talks about the 7-foot mean sea level. When we get to that point, when those folks, we're going to have Kelly McHugh, who's he gave us an opinion about flooding concerns over those properties. Mr. Shires wrote that they should be sluices underneath. You know, if you build a big bulkhead and put sluices under your house, it would be a real engineering challenge. But the only other thing I want to point out is just to show the commission a photo. This is the property to the west of Crosby's property that the parish would have the right-of-way extend to. And we think it's for another day. We don't, and in fact, most of the lot that is to be developed extends 200 feet into the lake. It's really a road into the lake. And we just think better to save the idea of a road into the lake for another day and address that rather than kind of preordain it with an extension of the road.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there are copies of that letter that are being distributed. I'll close this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You still have 1 minute if anybody wants to say. If not, 1 minute.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Louis Robien, R-O-B-E-I-N. I reside at 211 Esquinance. My wife is here, Gwendolyn Thompson, also resides here. I'm president of the association. I just want to reaffirm with the director and to our attorney has stated, as well as the 50-plus people that have raised their hands.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now let's bring it to the other side, if there is another side. Is there anybody against this minor subdivision? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission then. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we accept the petitioner's request as stated.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Richard as stated. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any more discussion? I have one point of discussion. What you're calling a driveway now instead of extenuation of the road, is that going to be serviced by the parish? Yes. Yes. Sorry, Mr. Crosby. You might want to answer that
Well, I'm
question.
going to ask, it's going to be serviced by Lewisburg.
Right. No. I'm just saying.
No, it's our intention to make that a private
Okay.
road. And we actually will build it with the proper turnaround. We understand, it's a driveway technically, I
Right.
guess, but it's going to have ability to have emergency vehicles and so
Okay.
forth on it.
Okay, so realistically, for those 2 lots that you're servicing, using that driveway could be gated if you wanted
Well,
to.
it could be, but yeah, it
Okay.
could be, but I'm not sure if that's really our intention at this point.
Okay, thank
While
you.
I'm here, though, I just want to make sure that language I was reading earlier about the amendment to the note that the staff recommended, this is something I drafted or something close to this. I'd just like to put that on record if Helen would accept that. If she saw it already, it's the same in the email that I sent you.
Yes.
The note that you have that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
that's it.
thank you.
And thank you.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner,
Mr. Chairman, just to
Yes.
clarify, the motion is to approve with the requested waiver, correct?
with the requested waivers, that's
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
With the requested waiver. I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Richard and a second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Commission members.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll have a little 2-minute break in case people want to leave the building.
Thank you.
Bunch of seats available now.
That's what Jay said too. Great mind thinks alike, huh?
Okay. All right, let's continue. Case 2019-1422 MSP, a minor subdivision of parcel C5 being 14.68 acres into parcels C5A and C5B. The owner is Jacob and Amy Scheckschneider. Surveyor is Land Surveying, Inc. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable David Fitzgerald. The location of the property is on the east side of Plantation Street, excuse me, north of Shady Lane being 73338 Plantation Street, Covington, Louisiana, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
This is a request to create two parcels, parcels C5A and C5B, and, the request is to waive the minimum lot size of 150 feet. As you can see, parcel C5 was approved and created as is. So basically, staff doesn't have any objection to the request for the creation of the two parcels. Would just like to bring to the attention of the owner that, if I'm not mistaken, if it is actually a total of 14.66 acres, there need to be an adjustment because parcel C5 is proposed to be 13.15 and C5A 1.53, which does not exactly equal to 14.66. So we may just need to do a little adjustment here, but at this time, staff would like to recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Is the petitioner here for this case? Excuse me. Your name and address, please.
Yes, name is Jacob Schick-Snyder. Address is 73338 Plantation Street, Covington.
And you're just wishing to just subdivide this into...
Yes, basically our plans when we purchased the property 4 years ago was to do a subdivision and actually have in-laws build on the property and build a home site. So just to have close to grandparents and grandkids be close together there, so.
Okay, all right. Is anybody in the audience against this minor subdivision?
I just general questions.
Did you fill out a card, please?
I didn't fill out a card, no.
Okay, you'll have to fill one out after you speak. Come on up.
Will do.
Sure.
I'm Jason Garner, 73388 Plantation Street. Is it residential? I mean, is it a residential subdivision?
Yeah, it's A2.
Okay.
Yeah, you're in A2.
And then the question is there was a statement about it's gonna be a subdivision. Do you plan to build more sublots in there? Okay, very good. That's really all I
Yeah,
had.
two parcels. Thank
Okay,
you, sir.
thanks.
Okay. Any more other concerns? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner,
Do we need a waiver?
Yes.
We need a waiver on the size of adjustment.
The
Right.
lot width, the
The lot-
minimum lot width.
The minimum lot width. So with the waiver.
With the waiver, okay? Commissioner Richard?
Mr. Schexnayder, quick question. I see you have a 10-foot servitude, I guess, which allows them access to the property as a driveway, and it runs right alongside your driveway. Are you planning on just using your driveway, or
That's the plan.
you're not gonna make it 10 foot wider?
No, they worked with Miss Helen Lambert on how to display it on the survey, and that was her recommendation to add a 10-foot access servitude, but no plans to make the driveway any larger.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lauren?
Math error be corrected administratively?
No, he will have to submit a revised survey. He's just gonna have to go to his surveyor and ask for a revised survey. It's probably just a typo. It happens.
Okay. Then, Mr. Schexnayder? If we approve this, are you willing to do that?
Yes, yes, I'll correct the survey.
Okay.
Commissioner Randolph?
Mrs. Schexnayder and maybe staff as well, but is this going to be considered a private drive? And who's going to be taking care of that? Who's going to maintain that roadway?
So, the definition of a private drive, I will maintain the driveway myself. It's still on the parcel C5B acreage. I'm not sure if, I guess yes, it would be considered a private drive.
Okay. I just really wanted to know if you were going to maintain
I will be,
it. Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
I still don't have a second in case anybody's interested.
With that, I'll second it.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Casabon with the waiver and a seconded by Commissioner Randolph. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Case 2019-1429 MSP, a minor subdivision of a 13.89 acre parcel into parcels A and B. The owner is Jerry L. and Svetlana Hafner. Surveyor is Land Surveying, Inc. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable Richard Tanner. Its location is on the west side of LA Highway 1082, south of LA Highway 40, being 82519 Highway 1082, Bush, Louisiana, Ward 5, District 6. Staff?
This is a request to create two parcels, which meets the minimum lot size of 5 acres. However, parcel B does not meet the minimum lot width of 300 feet. But as you can see on the survey, the reason is because, the owner of parcel A would like to keep the barn on the property. It meets the setback requirements, so staff would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here, please? Your name and address, please, sir.
Jerry Hafner, 82519 Highway 1082.
Okay, and you're all in agreement with everything,
Yeah. Basically, the reason is for straight lines.
Okay.
I mean, we're looking to make, sense of the properties out there, so.
Okay, is anybody in the audience want to speak in favor of this case or against this case? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Darty?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On access to parcel B, I don't see any connecting access off of 1082, and there's nothing shown to parcel A to access parcel B.
Parcel
What is your
B-
intention?
Parcel B has direct access. The 250 feet is fronting on 1082.
Okay, so doesn't he have to get a DOTD to approve a driveway cut?
Before there's a request to build a house, there will have to be a request made to DOTD to get a driveway permit correct.
Okay, that's what I was getting down to.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve
With the waiver?
with the waivers.
Motion to approve with the waiver by Commissioner Doherty. Commissioner Willie.
Second the motion.
I have a second by Commissioner Willie. Is there any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No petitions requests. Re-subdivision reviews. Case 2019-1402 MRP. Parcel designated as green space to be re-subdivided to create lots 7/8 and 7I in Bushwood subdivision. Owner is Secret Cove LLC, Robert M. and Deborah Hogan III. Surveyor is John G. Cummings and Associates. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable Richard Tanner. General location is on the east side of Kokomo Lane, north of Bushwood Drive, Bush, Louisiana, Ward 5, District 6. Staff?
The owner is requesting to create two parcels from a platted green space area, which is currently part of the subdivision. Since the two proposed lots are in compliance with the parish code and relative to size and width, and that there is no minimum acreage of green space required within the subdivision, staff has no objection to the request, just subject to having the survey amended to include a signature line for the chairman of the planning commission.
Thank you. Mr. Merle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, members of the commission, Paul Marone, on behalf of Secret Cove LLC and Mr. and Mrs. Hogan. You'll recall that several months ago I appeared before you with regards to this same development and explained to you about the changes that had occurred with regards to the Army Corps of Engineers right-of-way line adjacent to the canal, and where at one point, particularly when this development was approved many years ago, that right-of-way line rendered much of the property useless. Since that is no longer the case, there are other portions of the property that are now able to be brought into commerce. These two tracts are situated accordingly. As you'll note, there is still 2.34 acres of green space in this vicinity. Both of these lots exceed the minimum requirements for the A2 zoning. There's also significant other green space within the development. But we would respectfully request your approval to create the two lots that you see on the survey prepared by Mr. Cummings, which is in your packet. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to speak in favor of this case? Or anybody want to speak against this case?
I will speak in favor of it.
Okay.
My name is Lavelle Blitch. I'm with Remax Elite, and I represent Ms. Hogan in a number of real estate transactions, one being that development out there. If anything, she has done exhausted due diligence to try to benefit the community and the surrounding area, and has truly enhanced it, even with drainage, with her buildings, and with all of her site planning. So I would fully agree that if you all would, please support her efforts in what she's trying to do.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone against this case? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Commissioner Lauren. I have a second by Commissioner Lauren. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Case 2019-1424, MRP. Parcels designated as squares 310, 327, 340, 341, and 360. Town of Mandeville, Kingswood subdivision, and portions of Jones, Lavorce, Colbert, Nelson, Albert, and Armand Streets to be re-subdivided to create a 47-lot subdivision. Town of Mandeville, Kingswood subdivision. The owner is McInt LLC, Gregory Intravia. Surveyor is Kelly McHugh and Associates, Inc. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable Jacob Groby. The general location is west of Jones Street, north of Preval Street, and Maroney Trace subdivision, south of the Woodland subdivision, Mandeville, Louisiana. Ward 4, District 7. Staff?
The owner is requesting to create 47 lots within some existing undeveloped squares being part of the Town of Mandeville subdivision. Currently, the process of revocation is underway. The reason for the public hearing is because there's a creation or an adjustment of more than 5 lots. Staff does not have any objection to the request, subject to the following: that no work order will be issued until the revocation is completed. All infrastructures shall be constructed before plats can be signed, and a $10,000 maintenance obligation shall be provided.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, Commission. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent McKent LLC, which is both the owner and developer of Kingswood subdivision. We are in full accord with staff comments, which really are minimal as it relates to details, but I think it would be wise if I gave you some details concerning this subdivision, because there's likely to be some comments and questions from the public this evening. One correction to staff comments, it indicates 47 lots. The plat actually contains 61 lots, as you may see on your plan. I'm sure that was just a typo. Because it's been 61 lots consistently from the beginning. In any event, you should know, I think, that this is a portion of property that's already been plotted, if you will, into squares. That's why it is a re-subdivision. Also, the property has been and is currently zoned A4, and it will be developed in accordance with A4 zoning. 90-foot lots with depths running between 110 and 120 feet. As a precursor to this re-subdivision hearing this evening, you'll remember a few months ago that you heard the revocation case as it relates to the streets that are listed here in the staff report. The revocation ordinance actually was adopted by the council last Thursday evening, so that adoption is in place, and the developer will be acquiring the footprint, if you will, of the streets that were revoked, which allows his ownership to be total or complete as it relates to the development plan. Some more details as it relates to this development. There's a detention pond, as you can see, in the northwesterly portion of the proposed development, where our water will be not only gathered, it'll be detained, and the water will actually discharge from it at the southwest corner of that detention pond. This project will have central sewerage and water. It will have concrete streets. All of the homes will be slab on grade. We are not in a flood zone or a critical drainage area. We're in flood zone C. We have no water that leaves the subdivision to the east or southeasterly portion of the property. There is no physical access to the subdivision from Preval Street, which is on the south side of the lots that you can see there. I would say the other things that you should be aware of as part of our submission to the parish, we have submitted an extensive traffic study, which has been reviewed and approved. You'll note that you have no traffic comments as it relates to any deficiency with regard to the adequacy of existing infrastructure to handle the vehicles. Obviously, we have submitted a hydrology report, which again indicates that we are compliant with the parish drainage ordinance. You'll see no negative comments in the staff report as it relates to drainage. Bringing the detention pond into the development not only provides relief for this development, but presumably may capture other waters in the area as well. And of course, the result of having the detention pond will be to reduce the rate of discharge by 25% after the property is in its developed state, as opposed to its undeveloped state at present. So at the end of the day, we see this project being consistent with the zoning or land use that the parish has long since determined for this tract. We believe that there are no suggested impediments as it relates to infrastructure for traffic. We know that there are drainage issues in general in the area, but we're proud to say that we think our project not only takes care of itself in accordance with the parish regulations, but presumably may also have some other benefits, drainage benefits for properties in the region, if you will, in the surrounding vicinity. We think that concrete streets, central sewerage and water, and the other things that happen with subdivisions like this are very important. And last but not least, we expect these lots to have a value of $75,000 at a minimum, and we expect the home packages to average around $450,000, which we feel will be not only consistent but highly compatible with the other fine homes and neighborhoods that are in that area. At this point, that's the conclusion of my remarks. If I have any time, I'll reserve it for your questions or rebuttal later.
Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Thank you.
Before I ask the public's input on this, staff, we don't have to re-advertise this because of the error in the number of lots, do we?
No, I just put 47 instead of 61, which is very clear on the plat.
So it is 61. Okay. All right. Is there anyone to speak in favor of this case? Anyone to speak against this case? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
My name is Eric Luco. My address is 985 Bald Cypress Drive in Mandeville. I am the president of the Woodlands Property Owners Association, which borders two sides of this proposed development. Our neighborhood has big concerns. Obviously, the traffic is an issue, but they said a traffic study was done. But the drainage is our biggest concern for a couple of reasons. One, the side bordering red maple. We own the lot, the area behind it where the drainage is, and it's on our neighborhood association-owned property. And bigger than that, I want to know how this works within the FEMA project that is in place in that area for the Little Bayou Castine project that has an executive order in place regarding new development and changing the floodplain and the water levels. There's an executive order in place that can be viewed on page 13 of the project with explanations further down. And I would like to know what, if this project is in line with what is restricted by that FEMA project.
Okay. I'll have Mr. Shane give you some response on that if he can.
Okay.
Staff, do you have any information about this FEMA project that's supposed to be taking place, or is it?
Yeah, the parish has the Little Bayou Castine project, and we've been coordinating with the developer, and we don't have any conflicts with the project.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shane, any remarks? No, sir. Okay. Any more comments? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. My name is Michelle Stanton. I live at 367 Vireo Drive in Mandeville. I'm in the Maroney Trace subdivision. I just ask you, as these plans are brought forward, to please keep in mind not only property values, but property value is increased by the green space. And I've seen other plots where other developers have presented to you, and there is ample green space. This development has one small strip that backs up to Maroney Trace. Otherwise, there's none. And I also have some concerns, too, about other paperwork that may have been submitted with typos, since there was 47 on all the information, and now there's 60 plots. So just have some concerns about maybe, there's discrepancies in the information that's been provided. So okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the commission, my name is Craig Sen. I live at 1132 Scarlet Oak Lane in the Woodlands. And first, thank you for your time tonight. I wanted to mention just a couple of things for the commission's consideration. First, the flooding or the drainage issues in regards to the FEMA study that was done in 2015. I think that was a request by the parish itself to FEMA for the Little Bayou Castine project. And I think the purpose and need for that particular project was highlighted as alleviating major drainage and flooding problems within this very area where the subdivision or the proposed subdivision will sit, and which will include other neighboring subdivisions, the Woodlands included. And I think in terms of the commission's consideration of the project, to make sure that the proposed subdivision wouldn't in any way endanger that particular project. I think money has already been extended to the parish for that project, and I think there's a condition within the study itself that says as a condition of accepting the money that you must not actually build on the site in any way without making sure that it doesn't exacerbate the flooding and drainage issues. I think on the traffic front, if the commission would note that there is one way in and one way out of this particular subdivision, and with between 50 or, from what we hear now, 61 homes, if we average 2 cars per home, 2 to 3 cars per home, we're looking to have, coming one way in and one way out of this subdivision, anywhere from 100 to 200 cars. It's also worthy to note that that Jones Street will go straight through the Mandeville Terrace subdivision into the intersection of Jones and Solt. So that entire slate of traffic will go through Mandeville Terrace to an already busy Jones and Solt intersection. Solt, as many of you already know, is very busy with traffic coming to and from 1088. Mandeville Middle, where my daughter goes, of course, is already busy with the school traffic. I think if the commission would consider a second way in and out of the proposed subdivision, and I think the place to do that would be actually through Nelson. If you look on the map, Nelson, which I think is in the Airfield subdivision, but which comes into the newly proposed property, currently there are 2 lots that the developer has covering over that particular street. But if Nelson were to be extended into the other parcel of the subdivision, it would alleviate the traffic really concentrating through Mandeville Terrace, or pardon me, through Woodlands Terrace, and into that intersection of Solt and Jones Street. The third point I would like to make is just to retain as much buffer and green space as possible. I know Mr. Shane had noted, and the commission could note too, that currently along the Scarlet Oak property lines for the Woodlands, I think there is an unopened right-of-way where Jones and Colbert are not going to be used, at least in substantial part. And it's my understanding that that 50 to 60 foot unopened right-of-way will be retained for the most part. I think that's important for drainage coming from our properties within the Woodlands, and then also the drainage from the new properties in the proposed subdivision. I think that unopened right-of-way is really important to keep and to retain, and we appreciate the developer and the parish and the commission considering that. Other than that, retaining as much green space as possible I think would be desirable, but those I think would be the 3 accommodations that we would ask for the commission for this particular subdivision, to make sure that the FEMA studies drainage project isn't impacted, to make sure that the traffic impact, I know Mr. Shane had mentioned that there had been a traffic study done, but there still is only one way in and one way out of this subdivision, and you're flowing it all through Woodland Terrace subdivision, all those homeowners there, and then impacting Solt as well, and then just maintaining as much of a buffer, especially those unopened right-of-ways as possible, would be desirable. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Anyone else in the public?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I have a speaker card, but not on this issue. I'm Janice Mayfield. I'm on Lot 100 of Trailwood subdivision, and I'm concerned that you would open Nelson to this amount of traffic, as we only have one way in and out. We have 100 home subdivision, and this would increase the traffic on Nelson and on Garin Drive to an amount of 100 to probably thousands of cars going through our neighborhood. I totally disagree that this should even be considered. There is a retention pond on that property back there. It is non-functional at this time. I would say that it would be a better use for drainage to make sure our drainage is using that pond that was started but never completed, versus adding the amount of traffic through there, because the minute you give somebody a cut through they're gonna use it to get over to 1088 and I-12, beyond the problem it's sold. So I'm strongly against that option. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Kaye, I'm a neighbor of Miss Janice. Our
What's your
entire-
address, please?
1453 Fox Court.
Thank you for the record.
Our entire neighborhood, all of our kids catch the bus on Nelson. All of them, all the school-age kids. So that would open up them all to all that traffic. It's very dangerous, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's gonna help everybody.
Well, that may be too.
Yes, sir.
Pardon me. Good evening, council members. My name is Adam Zuckerman. I am a resident of the Woodlands. I live at 961 Bald Cypress Drive. My wife and I have lived in the subdivision for about 20 years, and the only thing I want to add, in addition to some of the comments this evening, specific to drainage, is the history and the knowledge that I have about the drainage in our subdivision. Our subdivision drained very well early on for a couple of years. As the area began to be developed around us and as additional phases were created within our subdivision, the Woodlands developed a serious drainage problem. That has been alleviated to a certain extent by the pond in the back, the drainage area that absorbs a lot of the water that may have been flowing into our ditches. So whereas early on, we experienced streets in our subdivision that flooded at times during moderate rainfalls, you could have several inches of water within our streets. That has, over the course, gotten better. My concern is that the drainage study, and I apologize, I understand there may be one, I haven't seen it yet. I'm not sure, has that been made publicly available? Okay, well, I haven't reviewed it, I'm not sure where to find it. If I could get some direction on where to find that, that would be helpful. But my concern is making sure that the drainage study is thorough and fully evaluates the needs of our subdivision, folks upstream, given the amount of homes that will be installed or proposed to be installed in that area. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Okay. 27 seconds left.
All right, I'll talk quick. My name's Casey Rowe, 395 Red Maple Drive, adjacent subdivision. I'm not going to say don't have a permit, but I want to say it's not yet, not until the FEMA project is constructed in entirety. And also as part of the, if I could just read a sentence from you, from a FEMA report. I don't know what's in the flood report the applicant has submitted, but as part of the FEMA report, it says per 44 CF 9.11 D4, until a regulatory floodway is designated, no new construction, substantial improvements, or other developments, including fill, shall be permitted within the base floodplain unless it is demonstrated that the cumulative effect of the proposed development, when combined with all other existing anticipated development, will not increase the surface water elevation of the base flood more than 1 foot at any point within the community. Thank you.
Well, what I've been hearing, I think the majority of these questions can actually be answered by staff too. As far as the traffic impact analysis, that's been done, correct? So we're all okay with that. And as far as the 25% runoff, that's also been done as well as, so we're okay with that,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
So that's a little bit reassuring to this commission up here from that point. Mr. Shane, would you like to have any rebuttal time?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I hope that my pointing out to the commission a typo in the staff report should not be taken as a suggestion that there are discrepancies either based on submissions by the developer or discrepancies in the work done by staff. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we've been working with staff on this project for a year. I think it's actually longer than that, but I'm going to say comfortably a year. And the layout has not changed significantly, nor the lot number or anything else. If the public doesn't know, they should know that via public records request, any and everything that we have submitted to Parish and staff is available for their review. And of course, we've had some citizens show an interest through the revocation case, and I've never had anyone come to me and ask me for any of that material. I'm not suggesting their comments about a line. I just want to make sure that it's understood that the information's there. There's nothing clandestine about this. And in fact, that information's available to them when they make a public record request tomorrow, if they want to get that stuff from the parish, or even talk to us about it. This property is not in a flood zone, either the existing maps or proposed maps. It's not in a critical drainage area. With regard to green space, A4 zoning does not require that we provide green space, but please take a look at the subdivision layout. And please take a look that the developer made a conscious effort to make sure that there is some form of right-of-way, unrevoked street, or in connection with the area nearest Maroney Trace, we created a 30-foot green space. My point is that we tried to make sure that there would be some physical geographic separation from our neighbors, because we knew and assumed that that would be something that they would prefer. The traffic study has been commented on. Let me say that we picked our point of access believing it was the best point of access for this development and least injurious to those that are around us. I think you've heard some comments this evening. There probably could be debates as to which street or streets might access this property. But at the end of the day, the traffic impact analysis proved to the parish that we in fact met the standards that are created in connection with the 61-lot subdivision. I'd like to close by saying simply that it's the developer's job to attempt to meet each and every requirement that the parish imposes as it relates to the development of the property. Take a good look at that staff report. I dare say that you will have a staff report tonight or any other night that is any cleaner in the sense that there is no request tonight for any deviation. There's no request for any waiver. There's no suggestion by staff that they'd like to see anything different. I think what that tells us is that the development is well thought out, it's code compliant, and again, we believe it can actually be an asset for the reasons that I stated earlier in my presentation. With that having been said, we appreciate your consideration of granting re-subdivision this evening for Kingswood.
There's 5 minutes available for rebuttal from the other side, in case anyone wants to speak. Yes, sir.
Mitchell Smith, 1138 Scarlet Oak Lane. I live in the back of the Woodlands, and if you, this is in reference to what he actually just commented about taking a conscious effort to keep a buffer zone. I've lived in that street. I was the first house on the lot for going on 14 years. There are 3.5 houses basically affected with this new layout, the way the street's coming in off of Jones. That is not friendly to us at all. If you look at, my lot's 342. And if you look at it, that's that new Sir Erlach Street. I have 197 feet of back fence. I have no idea if I'm gonna have a street up against the back of my house. The same thing with lot 334. And in the Maroney Trace, lot 33. Everything behind their house is gonna be concrete. We're gonna have street lights behind us in our backyards. And my pool sits 5 feet from my fence line. The back right corner where you take that left on the Maiden Way is 20 feet from the structure of my house. I've been told how much yardage or how much I'm gonna have off the back of my property line. I have no idea how wide the street's gonna be, but I've had trees and I understand development, but there has to be some kind of better way to help lot 334, 33 in Maroney Trace and, 342 in the Woodlands. There's no buffer. So that's actually untrue, what their attorney just got up and told you. And as far as the traffic, until you live there and go through the mornings and afternoon with Mandeville, that middle school, and everything else on that street, it's gonna be a nightmare. So I'm curious what he plans on doing, since he's made a conscious effort to point out everybody's going to have a buffer. There's 3.5 houses on this street, on this layout, that do not. With structural integrity in my pool, I'll have concrete trucks driving behind my house and all these houses for 5 years, building 61 homes. What happens when the pool cracks? And 2 of the 3 houses have them. So I'm just curious. And I found out about this Tuesday. We don't sit online all day and see what's put out by you guys in new developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Hansen. I live at 1102 Scarlet Oak. I'm right there at the intersection of the Jones and Midland or whatever. I mean, that T is right into my backyard. And like Mitch said, it don't show no buffer zone for me, the way I see it. I don't see anything. It shows the road running right directly behind my property. And where my concern is, I also have the pool right there on the property line. And I know anything can happen, but I'm worried about somebody missing that turn because of all this extra heavy traffic going through there, coming right through my yard in the pool while my kids are out there. That's a concern. The flooding, he's saying it's supposed to, the drainage is all taken care of. I can show you any point in time the amount of water that is right behind my fence line and creeping through into my yard. It's got nowhere to go now. And if they cement all that, what's it going to do to me then? And also, I'm concerned, like he said, with the structure of my pool, with all the heavy equipment, the dozers coming back there clearing. And when I bought this place, it was nice having that green space to look out. And when I stand on my pool, I mean, I see over the fence. I mean, I'm going to see nothing out there now. It's just straight open. I mean, I know this is all petty stuff, but the safety thing is kind of an issue for me. My children out in the pool playing, out in the backyard, where a road it comes T right into my backyard. I don't agree with that. I don't see how they can say they did a traffic study. There's no road to do a traffic study, per se. And like Mitch was speaking, the amount of traffic that's there now just to get to the schools, it's unreal. I mean, you sit there forever waiting in lines. So I don't see how they did a good traffic study. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Craig Sen again. Just 2 quick points, a couple that Mitch had mentioned. Number one, in regards to the FEMA study, I think one thing that FEMA had mentioned was the importance, and as part of the project, actually having a 5-acre detention pond. And
I'll give you 1 more minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I haven't seen anything in regards to the flood control project or the flood study that was done that would include or incorporate a 5-acre detention pond. Mitch had also mentioned that all the traffic will be going by his property, which again begs the importance of a second way in and a second way out. I totally understand the residents of Airfield not wanting any portion of the traffic through their subdivision. I totally get it and understand it, and I would be saying the same thing if I lived in Airfield. Now, I don't live in Woodland Terrace, but if I would, my concern would be, of course, theirs. I don't want all of it coming through Woodland Terrace as well. Solt is already very difficult, can be unsafe, especially for the Mandeville Middle traffic, and having a second way in and a second way out for this particular subdivision would be important for traffic impact purposes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Shane, you still have a minute and 30 plus another minute, 2:30 if you need.
Thank you. With regard to the comments about streetlights, there are none. With regard to the street widths, they're 20 feet within a 53.5-foot wide right-of-way. So the street surface itself will not be abutting the property line. I don't mean this to be any harsher statement than it is, but this is a town of Mandeville plat, which I'm pretty certain was created and recorded in the 19th century, which means the developer is using right-of-ways that have been there. It's also right-of-ways that were there when these other folks bought lots in their subdivisions. It doesn't mean that I don't hear their comments and understand what they're saying, but it's not as if the developer has determined the grid work or layout of the streets that run to the rear of these properties. I think I do stand corrected that technically there are a few lots where they do not have the creation. But the point that I was trying to make, and I'm not bashful at all about making the statement again, is that if you look at the development, the developer could have been more selfish and at least attempted to close more streets and or not use the green space that was given. And the point I was trying to make was we tried to be as considerate as we could. Now, if you look in particular at the point of access in and out of the subdivision, you're correct. There's maybe 3.5 lots where what I said is not universal. But that doesn't mean it's a bad development. Also, I would say that with...
Please give respect for the person at the podium.
Also, I would say that a 61-lot subdivision is a relatively small subdivision. I can assure you that your engineering staff look long and hard at that TIA, knowing the comments that would be coming forward from the public. And we have to rest on the fact that our study addressed these issues and that the plan that we've come up with is not only one that's code compliant, but that it's safe and that it's workable. So we think this is a good plan, and with all due respect to the neighbors, we ask, just as the staff comments suggest, that you grant re-subdivision approval this evening.
Thank you. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
I have a question for the staff. I can't tell from the plat that we have in front of us that was in the package, but I'm looking at the Woodlands subdivision and the other adjacent subdivisions. Do any of those subdivisions have any green space? They don't show up on the map if they do. Pardon?
No, he's addressing staff.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was about the wood.
Question was for the staff.
So to answer that question, it would depend on the requirements and for green space whenever those subdivisions came through the process and whether they went through the subdivision process or not.
So those subdivisions don't have green space, and this subdivision does have some limited green space.
Well, to clarify that, so Woodlands went through the full subdivision process and should have green space located within it, as did Maroney Trace. Whereas Woodlands Terrace actually is not a subdivision, it's a similar thing to where it was a lot of record along Salt Street. So any green space in there was previously unopened right-of-ways that the parish has either not developed or used for other purposes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, I've seen a lot of these within the Mandeville area, the lots of records, as we've stated. These lots were plotted out in the 1920s and 30s, and a lot of the developers combined lots that were closer to town to make larger lots than they were. This is a lot of record. It's been stated that they have met the traffic study. The drainage has to be the 25% runoff with the detention, and the traffic is going to be increased as far as, but not to the point, they put in all of the turning lanes or whatever they would need for that. Since this is the lots of record, I'm going to make a motion to approve the revocations.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Willie.
Jeff, I have a question. Regarding the drainage on the proposed detention pond, that would be served by Nelson Street that's unconstructed?
That would be what?
Would that be the servitude is coming through there or through the lots I see on kind of
Well,
like?
I think we have a couple of access points to that detention pond.
Okay, and
Coming from the east, right, Kelly? You see those servitudes that are cut through the 25-foot drain access servitude between lots 36 and 37?
okay, so that's a proposed detention pond. Is that the same detention pond that someone mentioned in opposition that wasn't completed or anything? It's not the same
No,
pond?
this is a new
Okay.
detention pond that's being created to service this development.
Okay, thank you. And I'll second the motion.
You have a motion to second? You second the motion? Commissioner Baggert?
Yeah, Jeff, I got one more question. And I'm trying to understand this plot plan. Between lots 1 and 5, where it abuts to the Woodland subdivision, there's a non-constructed road there. That's gonna stay non-constructed, or?
Well, yes, sir, that is a public right-of-way that we did not seek to have revoked. And until and unless the parish were to open it, and we certainly have no desire to see that happen.
So you're to come in off Jones Street, take a left on Merlin, and then go into the subdivision, and then take a right on Sir Ulick, something, and then take a left into the other part of the subdivision.
Yes, sir.
Is that the traffic pattern?
Yes, sir.
So the way I see it, it affects one lot, where you have a road abutting one lot in the Woodlands. Am I correct?
One
Are you
lot
gonna come in on?
Well, I mean, I guess that maybe lots 34 through 29 abut the Woodlands, but for that 30-foot drainage right.
I'm talking about road access,
Oh,
new roads.
sure. I think that's correct. One lot. If I'm missing one, it's unintentional.
I see just lot 342 having a road behind it.
Okay.
Excuse me?
33 in Maroney Trace.
Oh, okay, I see. 33 in Maroney Trace, yeah, I see that. So those are the two, yeah. Okay, I just want to be clear on it, I'm trying to.
That's
Huh?
it.
There's three lots.
There's 3 lots, probably.
Is that,
I have, any more discussion? I have a motion by Commissioner Casabon and a second by Commissioner Willie to approve the re-subdivision. Please vote. Did everybody vote?
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next case. Case 2019-1428 MRP. Parcels designated as lots 1 to 42 to be re-subdivided to create lots 1A, 2A, 7A, 8A, 11A, 12A, 15A, 16A, 19A, 20A, 23A, 24A, 27A, 28A, 31A, 32A, 35A, 36A, 39A, 40A, Square 15, Tammany Hills. Owner is Advanced Mortgage Company LLC, Bruce Rayner. The surveyor is John Bonneau and Associates. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable David Fitzgerald. Its location is on the east side of 5th Street, on the west side of 6th Street, south of Adams Avenue, north of Jefferson Avenue, Covington, Louisiana, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
The owner is requesting to re-subdivide lots in order to create 19 buildable sites. The reason for the public hearing is because the proposal involves the creation of more than 5 lots, and staff has no objection to the request.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Paul Marone on behalf of the Rayner family and Advanced Mortgage Company. This is a sister case to the entering the public right-of-way case that you heard earlier. These lots abut Fifth Avenue. They're all owned by the Waiver family, and we're requesting to combine the lots as set forth on the plat by Mr. Bono. I would point out a couple of facts that you may not be aware of. One, each of these lots will be provided central utilities. Also, the Waiver family, when they began developing in this area many years ago, they acquired several squares, 6 squares of property in particular, and at that time they donated lots from each of those squares to the parish for some semi-regional type detention. And so through that process, there's a developmental agreement so that they have addressed their drainage as well, which oftentimes you may not see in an entering the public right-of-way in a straight re-subdivision request as this one. But I wanted to point that out to you this evening. Other than that, we would respectfully request your approval of the re-subdivision as set forth on Mr. Bono's plat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of this re-subdivision? Anyone want to speak against this re-subdivision? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Lauren. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, anytime we go larger lots, I'll second that motion.
I have a second by Commissioner Casabon. So Commissioner Lauren made the motion, Commissioner Casabon seconded. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. No dormant subdivision review. Tentative subdivision review, 2019-1423 TP. River Park Estates Phase 2, developer owners River Park Estates LLC, engineers Deep South Design Group, Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable James Thompson. Its location is on the north side of MP Blanche Road, west of LA Highway 25, Covington, Louisiana, Ward 3, District 3. Staff's comments?
Yes, sir. River Park Estates received a zoning change approval at the April 2nd, 2019 Zoning Commission meeting for a portion of Phase 2. So any tentative approval granted shall be contingent upon the zoning approval being finalized. A tentative plan has been reviewed by this office and inspection was made of the site on March 28th, 2019. It is recommended that the tentative submittal be approved, subject to the following. Number 1, provide written verification from 911 addressing for the road name and address approval of this subdivision. Number 2, revise the boundary description title to read River Park Estates Phase 2. Number 3, a TIA for Phase 2 of this development is required to be submitted and approved by St. Tammany Parish and Louisiana DOTD before a work order can be issued for this project. Number 4, this case was advertised with an incorrect case number. The advertisement read 2018-1423-TP instead of 2019-14T3 or 1423-TP. The typo in the case number will not require the case to be re-advertised as sufficient public notice was given. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone, again, this time on behalf of River Park Estates, LLC. You may recall that I appeared before you last week in your capacity as the Zoning Commission and requested approval of the rezoning of a small portion of the property that is subject to this request. Mr. Tissue noted that it is the 6 lots at the northwest corner of the plat that you see attached in your packet. And so we understand that while you did grant approval to our request to rezone that portion consistent with the rest of River Park Estates, we are still within an appeal period which will expire Friday of this week. And we acknowledge and accept the fact that if you will grant approval this evening, that it is contingent upon that appeal period expiring without any appeal or objection to that zoning and the zoning becoming final. So we're aware of that, we accept that, and have no objection to it. With regards to the other comments, item number 1, we are in contact with the 911 administrator regarding the street names. We will continue to work with the administrator to make sure that these names are allowed. If for some reason there is a problem, then we will have that worked out before we come back to you at preliminary. Likewise, we will revise the boundary description as noted in item 2. With regards to the traffic study, there was a traffic study done for this project several years ago that included 186 lots, so the entire development. We did receive some comments from engineering staff this week pointing out some problems with that report. The dates on the counts were old. At that point, some of you may remember earlier on there was another access point that DOTD would not allow on Highway 25. So as a result, we do have to go back and amend and modify that report. We now have those comments, as I mentioned. We'll be contacting our traffic engineer, and we'll have that for you at the time of preliminary. Other than that, we would respectfully request your approval, subject to those comments and subject to my comments this evening regarding the zoning case, as well as having the traffic study prepared and submitted to you at the time we come back for preliminary. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone in the audience would like to speak in favor of this project or against this project? If not, against this project, please come up, ma'am. Your name and address, please. You have a speaker card as well? It's okay. You can fill one out later. Just give us your name and address, please.
My name's Amy Rotz. I live at 16941 River Park Drive, which is like the last house kind of that they're gonna build next to. And I guess my main concern is that they're already building so many houses on River Park Estates, and the traffic is only gonna be like the other subdivision. It's only one way in, one way out for all these houses, and they're gonna build more houses on it. And then my next concern is they already built a playground on MP Plunge. So all this traffic is gonna be passing this playground with all our kids playing on it, which is not safe at all. And then the drainage, I guess, would be another, because our backyard is like a swamp, and then they're building right next to our house, because we're the last house. So I guess drainage would be another problem as well. But I think that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? And do you have a speaker card?
I live on 16945.
Your name, please?
Danya, and I'm her neighbor. We just spoke. I was wondering if there's any way to add a street to go on River Park Drive that was supposed to be there. Because we have all this traffic that's going on that main road, and they build that park there with all the children there. I mean, at least if you're going to keep the park there, to place in another access way for people to get into the community, because there's kids riding fast on that street, and then the cars coming really fast on that little corner as well. It's just really dangerous for the children, at least. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Paul, would you like to comment on that traffic report you're gonna try to update on the issues those two ladies just commented on?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of comments there. With regards to the park and the rights-of-ways and the traffic, as you may recall, the rights-of-way for River Park Estates were established by plat long ago. So the street layout that you see there was not the layout that we devised, but rather it was the layout of the streets and the rights-of-ways pursuant to that old plat. So we're not here tonight to create the rights-of-way. They're already there, and we're just utilizing those that are in existence. The park was created by my client as part of this development to serve the entire development. This is phase 2 of that. So we're aware of the park being there. It was our contribution. It was added on property that was not originally part of the boundaries of River Park Estates, so it was something that we went outside of the existing development, acquired property to create that park. Likewise for the drainage. Obviously, we'll talk more about the drainage when we come back to you at preliminary, but the drainage for this project, the retention for this project, is being handled by the developer in a pond created on property that he acquired for that purpose adjacent to the development. Finally, as I said, all of these issues will be addressed either at the preliminary phase regarding the drainage and the traffic. We do expect that traffic study to mirror what came back with the original study, but we're going to go through that process. We're going to update it. We're going to use the existing data. We're going to take the new counts, and then we'll see what that says. We'll submit it to your staff, and we'll be here to talk about it during preliminary. So I understand their concerns, but we can't relocate the rights-of-way because they're already there. And we will be back before you if and when we have the opportunity to proceed to preliminary to discuss more about the traffic and drainage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Paul, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
He mentions central water and sewer. Where's the sewer coming from? I don't see I see manholes, I see lift stations, but I don't see a facility.
Yeah, there's an existing facility that we will be tying into, and that facility, I believe, is on the other side of MP Planche Road. I'm looking at Mr. Williams to make sure that I give you the correct information.
On the south side?
Yes, on the south side of MP Planche Road.
Is it part of another development?
Yes,
or?
yes, it's in another development, that's correct.
Okay, so there'd be existing lines, you connect into their system?
We're connecting to that system, yes.
Water and sewage?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Casabon.
I'll make a motion to approve with these lots of records and what we did at the zoning to rezone those, but make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Willie. I have a second by Commissioner Willie. One moment, please. Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Case 2019-1425 TP. Copper Ridge, developer owner, Shelby LaSalle Jr., LLC, engineer, J.B. Burks and Associates, LLC, Parish Council District Representative is Jacob Groby, and the general location is at the end of Hazel Drive, north of Montmartre Street in Mandeville, Louisiana, Ward 4, District 7. Staff?
Yes, sir. The tentative plan has been reviewed by this office, and an inspection was made of the site on March 28, 2019. It is recommended that the tentative submittal be approved, subject to the following comments. Number one, provide written approval from 911 addressing for the proposed road names. Number two, a waiver of the minimum lot frontage requirement is being requested for this development. Staff sees no compelling reason to grant the waiver, as the northern lot line of lot number 8 can be adjusted to meet minimum road frontage requirements. If the Planning Commission wishes to approve this waiver request, a 2/3 majority vote of the full membership of the commission is needed pursuant to section 125-224. Number three, a waiver of the Boulevard entrance requirement is being requested for this development. Staff has no objection to this proposal due to the location and layout of the subdivision entrance. In order to approve this waiver request, a 2/3 majority vote of the full membership of the commission is needed pursuant to section 125-224. Number four, Copper Ridge Drive must retain the name Hazel Drive since it is a continuation of an existing road per 911 addressing. A waiver for a fee in lieu of detention for this development will need to be requested and granted for this at the time of preliminary approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone again, this time on behalf of Mr. LaSalle and our engineer, Mr. Burks, who couldn't be here this evening. This 10.113 acre tract is zoned A4, has been zoned A4 for some time, even prior to my client acquiring the tract. We're seeking to develop it under its existing zoning. The plat that you see before you lays out 24 lots. All of these lots exceed the minimum size requirement under A4. And in fact, the density that you see here is less than is allowed under the A4 zoning. With regards to the staff comments, we are in touch with Mr. Sang at 911 and have been talking with him about the road names. He has suggested that a few might need to be changed. We will have that fleshed out for you by the time we come back for preliminary. We've had ongoing discussions with him. With regards to Lot 8, after reviewing the staff comments with Mr. LaSalle and with Mr. Burks, we did note that we could amend that lot line so that we can get 60 feet of frontage. It's our understanding that the requirement when you're on a curve like this, a cul-de-sac or this half cul-de-sac, that the requirement under A4 is 60 feet. We can meet that 60 feet requirement, and so we will amend the plat accordingly to do that. I would also just point out, though, that with that being the case, if you look at the plat, you will see that this is a very large lot, and in fact, it opens up quite a bit. It far exceeds the minimum. At the setback line, the width is over 100 feet, so there's plenty of space there. But that being said, we can adjust the line to get the 60 feet, and we will do that and have that for you on the preliminary plat. We do request the waiver for the Boulevard entrance. Staff is in support of that, and we would ask you to support it as well. With regards to Hazel Drive, as I mentioned before, we are in contact with the 911 administrator. He pointed out to us that there is a possibility that Hazel Drive, the name of Hazel Drive, could be changed. We are working with him on that. If it can be changed, then at the time we come back, we will have it reflected as Copper Ridge. If it cannot be changed, then as staff noted, we recognize that we would have to continue the Hazel Drive name into the subdivision, and we will do that. We will comply with whatever the 911 administrator ultimately determines with regards to Hazel Drive, and we will work through that with him as we move through the process. With those comments, we would respectfully request your approval of tentative with the understanding that we'll have to come back before you at preliminary and address those issues that would be pertinent at that time. In the meantime, I'll yield the rest of my time, but be happy to answer any questions that any commissioner might have at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Bob. Does anybody else want to speak in favor of this tentative development? Or against this tentative development? Yes, sir. Your name?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the commission. My name is Charles Lesh. I'm a resident of the Maroney Trace subdivision at 544 Tanager Drive. I'll try to make my remarks brief because I believe there are a number of people here who oppose this development. In fact, I'd like everybody here who's here that wants to oppose, you can see that we have a large number of people who oppose this development. So again, I'll try to be brief in my remarks to save time for others. Our primary concern is that this is a large number of lots on a relatively small plot of ground. Those of us on Tanager Drive, including myself, if you can look at the proposed plot plan for Copper Ridge, the long side of that development abuts the backyards of many of us who live on Tanager Drive. And under this plan, all of those lots would now butt up against the backs of our properties. And we have a number of other concerns. Traffic is a huge concern. We're talking about 24 lot sites, 48 cars a day coming in and out of Hazel Drive, which is a tiny little drive. We do not know what provision has been made with regard to drainage. We already have some drainage problems in Maroney Trace. We are concerned about congestion. We note that there is no green space provided for in this proposed development. So there are a number of problems, and our primary concern, of course, is the diminution of our property values as a result of this high-density proposed plan that would immediately abut much of our subdivision. But there's a particular thing that I would like to point out to the commission, and that is that roughly 12 years ago, another developer proposed a similar development on this very plot of land. We were able to work with that developer and get him to change his plan. The development at that time was called Canton Crest. And I have copies of that plat. If I could distribute them to you, I would like to do that. If y'all could take a look at this. And as a result of the changes to that plan, we came up with an agreed plan that everybody was happy with. And what it involved was larger lots and a buffer zone between the backs of our properties on Tanager Drive, to be followed by, in other words, the buffer zone, then the ditch, then their street, and then their other ditch, and the lots were on the other side of that. So we didn't have people's backyards butting up against our backyards. A much, much better plan. We would look forward to the opportunity to work with this developer to see if we could make a change so that his arrangement would be similar to this. We heard discussion in previous presentations about buffer zones. This type of plan would allow for a buffer zone, and it would be much better for those of us in Maroney Trace, particularly those who live on Tanager Drive and whose properties butt up against the back of this proposed development. So those are the primary remarks that I would like to make. We are concerned about all of these issues: traffic, drainage, congestion, no green space, no buffer zone. We think there are significant problems with this proposed development, and we oppose it strongly. Thank you.
Good evening. Tyler Abity, 1742 Hazel Drive. Actually just moved to the parish back around Christmas. I'm a professional engineer in Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi. My specialty is hydrology, civil development, primarily for ExxonMobil and other crude storage terminals, focusing mostly on wetland development and drainage. I'm a bit concerned right now with this development. Over the last 4 stormfall events that we had, where we had rainfall greater than 1 inch, I've had water 6 feet from my front door. The drainage ditches are constantly full of trash and debris, and the lot sizes currently proposed create a runoff coefficient that would dramatically overwhelm the drainage coming from Maroney Trace, Hazel Drive, and Montmere. I certainly welcome and appreciate the developer's wish to develop. I think that if the proposed lots were reduced to 12, limiting the driveways to a 40-foot by 100-foot dimension, and then installing HDPE pipe around the drainage ditches covered with a 8-inch drain overlay would suffice the drainage problems. Furthermore, we have a serious traffic issue. Right now, you have a 3-way intersection. Contrary to many of my fellow residents in the Maroney Trace subdivision, that stop sign is optional right now. My wife we're expecting our first little girl, and I certainly would not want to be on the corner of that street playing with her and then have a car fly by. There's many, many trees, vegetation that currently blocks the view, and you'll have a very dangerous blind spot. Furthermore, I am also an expert witness, state and federal, for FEMA, along with other groups that have used various civil developments on various cases involving pipeline accidents. The current firm maps and base flood elevations are incorrect. The drainage levels are a lot more severe than are currently being reported online, and I ask that you postpone this approval and ask that the developer comes up with a better solution that suits all the neighboring areas. Thank you for your service and your time, and I appreciate the time to speak. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susan Hibbs. I live at 1748 Hazel Drive in Mandeville. And my main concern is the flooding. I have pictures. You know, I don't know if people do all kinds of survey, but do they actually come out and look and see after rain is what's going on? What's the problem? This is the problem that we're all concerned with. We're flooding now, and this is just a little bit of rainfall. What if we have a rain event that trails over us like some of the other places recently have had. We'll be totally flooded. It'll be in our houses and not just up to our houses. So we'd like to present that problem too. Traffic is a problem right at that corner. You said no one stops there. There's a stop, but it's not mandatory apparently. And another thing is that from the previous owner, I found out that it's almost 50% of this land is wetlands. So my problem is we're having this problem with flooding already, and it's almost 50% wetlands. That means it's going to have to be raised. That property's going to have to be raised, and where's all that water going to go? I don't see a retention pond on their plan. So that's a big concern. Another is the trees. There are 3 huge, beautiful, stately oak trees on that property. Are they going to keep that, or is it going to tear everything down like they do all the different subdivisions around me? And those are my concerns, and I'd appreciate you guys just consider them when you approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm once again Janice Mayfield. I did submit a speaker card. I'm a homeowner in Trailwood, Lot 100, which is directly behind this proposed subdivision. I've been there for 30 years. In the past, those subdivisions that have been approved have allowed homes whose roof line nearly touches the fence abutting our subdivision at the other end of Tortoise. So we don't have a good history of the Planning Commission approving subdivisions with any sorts of buffer. So one half of our subdivision have these sorts of abutting home sites from a next door subdivision. In the very beginning, Garon Drive, when Trailwood was built, put in a buffer, and it has been enforced in the past. This subdivision does not seemingly allow any buffer between Trailwood and Copper Ridge. I think that that's a useful consideration, considering that would also allow a little bit of green space. I am concerned that in the future, they would once again try to, because Hazel is a substandard access road, it's barely 1 lane wide. It's a part that for access for 24 homes, I'm really concerned that they're going to look at Trailwood as a second access. And we, as a group of homeowners, strongly oppose this option. We do not want further traffic. We're a safe neighborhood with one way in and one way out. We'd like to keep it that way because we also have lots of children and et cetera. We'd like to keep our home values up as well. I do understand progress. I think there's room for improvement on this plan, and I would hope that you would consider our concerns, because there is no green space, no place for this water to go. When Maroney Trace went in and Woodlands went in, the backyards of every abutting house to those subdivisions have higher water than they used to. And now, if you're going to add another 27 homes on the last corner of a subdivision, where's this water going to go? I have water in my backyard as well. I am familiar with the property that's been there all this time. I do know it's got wetlands on it, and we appreciate the green space it allows, but drainage, it just can't be underestimated, as well as the traffic problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now bring it back. Paul, you have 6 minutes of rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of comments. Let's first begin with the number of lots. As you know, the number of lots is determined by the underlying zoning. The underlying zoning has been in place for many years. We have less lots on this plan than our underlying zoning allows. At tentative, what is before you is the lot layout. The number of lots is set by the zoning. Not only was the underlying zoning on this property set many years ago, but it is consistent with the zoning of our neighbors. So the lots that we have in our site are equal to or larger than the lots in Maroney Trace next door. And if you look at those lots, you will see that most or many of those are not as large as the lots that we have here. So it's not as if we are coming into an area and we are proposing lots that are out of character for what is already there. To the contrary, the standard was already set before we got there, and we are simply abiding by what is there today. So when we talk about the number of lots, respectfully, that has been decided, and we are less dense than our zoning allows. With regards to drainage, as you well know, this is a multi-step process. At the tentative stage, we are not required to have all of the answers for the drainage that will be provided at this site. That is at the preliminary stage. We hear the concerns. We have heard the concerns in our meetings with staff. We know that this is a sensitive area with regard to drainage, and we know that we'll have to be prepared to answer those questions for you and for the public at the preliminary stage. But we are not at the preliminary stage at this point. We're only at tentative. With regards to green space and setbacks, I would point out to you that if you look at Maroney Trace that is next door, there is not a buffer in the back of those lots that abut this property. And so that wasn't a concern at that time, but now it is a concern, right? I understand what they're saying, but we have the same property rights that the people across that imaginary line have. And we have 24 lots. We are not putting in 100 lots. We're not putting in 60 lots. We're not even putting in 30 lots. We're putting in 24 lots, which is less than the zoning allows. We have setbacks on all of our lots, as is required by the parish. So none of our structures are going to abut that property line. In fact, as I mentioned before, our lots are larger than the minimum. We have increased the size of our lots in lieu of having additional green space. There's about 1.5 acres of additional area inside of our lots that to make those lots larger. If we took the minimum that was allowed in lot sizes, we would have about 1.5 acres left over. We have chosen to try to put that into the lots to make the lots larger, to make the houses, more space for the houses, and to bring the property values up inside of the development. And I would also point out that with regards to green space, there is not a requirement under A4 for green space. Finally, with regards to some of the other concerns in Canton Crest, I'm not familiar with what took place in prior attempts to develop this property. We're not privy to any of that. It was not my client that sought to do that. It was not our engineer that was involved in that. Certainly, I'm happy to speak to Mr. Lesh or anybody else that has concerns about it. But at this stage, what we are working with is the ordinances on the books of the parish. And we have been careful to understand those and to comply with those. And if you look at the staff comments, you will see that there are very few comments. The only waiver being requested is with regards to the Boulevard entrance. The one regarding Lot 8, we believe that we can move the lot line and comply with that. Finally, with regards to the traffic, your traffic impact ordinance sets a threshold for traffic studies. We are below that threshold. That threshold was not taken at random. The reason that the threshold was set is because it was the belief of the people that put that ordinance together and that passed that ordinance that a development below that size had a negligible impact on the overall traffic in the area. So that is why there is not a traffic study required. Again, these are the ordinances of the parish. These are the rules which we have to comply with, and we intend to comply with those. But I want to make sure that everybody is clear as to how that came about and the reasoning for that. So we would respectfully request your approval this evening. We're asking you for approval on tentative only. I recognize that there are questions that the residents have with regards to drainage and other issues. I understand that there are probably questions that the commission might have. I know there's questions that your staff has about drainage and how that will be handled. When we get to that stage in the process, we will do our best to answer those questions, and then you will be able to determine if we've answered them sufficiently. But that's for another night and not for this evening. So with that being said, we'd respectfully request your approval this evening based on your staff's comments, your staff's recommendation, and my comments this evening. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, I have rebuttal time for the opposite side, if anybody wants to speak.
Just a simple sentence. I'm Jim Seigneur, Trail Woods, Swan Court.
Yes, sir.
It was pretty good to state the law there and the zoning laws, and that was really excellent. But all I want to say is, just because you can do it, doesn't mean you should do it. And I think this thing takes a great review. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Lavelle Blitch, and I live at 652 Tanager Drive. Fundamentally, I am opposed to this, and I realize that we're really fighting a losing battle. So I'll make some suggestions and ask that the developer consider those things. One is, as far as Hazel, the name Hazel Drive is concerned, that was changed to Hazel. That street is was an unused portion of Atlin. And so if it's changed, it doesn't really matter. It's really up to the 911 people. But if they want to change it to Copper Ridge, great. My concern is, I'm not opposed to development. I mean, how could I be? I'm a real estate agent. But if you are going to do this kind of development, be cognizant of the adjacent properties that you have. And if you look at the design that they have, you could flip it and reverse it and put the larger homes against the properties along Tanager, and thus have fewer properties there and have less adverse impact on those properties.
Thank you.
Tyler Abbott again at 1742 Hazel Drive. I understand that the developer would like to push this through in a tentative phase. However, right now, the development is so far away from where it needs to be for drainage that any type of approval will be negligent in the fact that we will flood if this is developed. I think 12 houses is a very strong middle ground. I've done the runoff calculations over the weekend. It's substantial. It affects us, but we can still stay outside the flooding zone. I just ask that it's denied and they can come back to the drawing board with a better presentation, because right now I know concessions are made. It's a negotiation. Staff's got a lot of work to do. I just think that it would be beneficial to the community and also the board to where you acknowledge that there are some issues right now that need to go back and reconcile. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Lesh again. I would just like to repeat my suggestion that we would very much welcome the opportunity to speak with Mr. Marone and his client to see if we can't work out an arrangement, as we did with the prior developer years ago, to one that would be acceptable to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Before we talk to the commission, as chair, I can't make motions or second. But I know this area very well. And although tentative doesn't include retention and such, I'd have a very big problem in approving a preliminary plan without a retention pond on this property. In this fee in lieu of retention, I think sometimes is a benefit, obviously, for the builder, but for the overall thing, we always talk about flood control and things like that. Even if we approve it tonight, personally, I wouldn't approve it at preliminary. That's just my comments. Now I bring it back to the staff, to the commission. Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we have heard a lot of comments, and yes, this is tentative. It's an idea of a developer buying a piece of property and what he can do with this piece of property and everything. Mr. Davis, I certainly understand what you're saying at tentative, there's no retention pond, detention ponds in place at this point in time. It could have been maybe done, but I think at this point, we can move forward to a preliminary, and at that point in time, we'll have a lot of questions answered for the people here in the audience right now. I know through my years of being on the commission that Mr. Morone would be more than happy to have a community meeting with you folks and go over this, but right now, it's got to go past tentative, and that's what they need to do. So at this point in time, I will make a motion to approve with the waiver for the Boulevard. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Casabon.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Doherty with the one waiver for the Boulevard. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, I am looking at an area, and I do remember this area, and I don't remember the name of it, but when this was brought before us before for development. But I just kind of have a problem. I know that he rescinded the waiver for the Lot 8 and the waiver for the Boulevard. But explain to me, Jay, about the waiver that for lieu of detention. How does that come in? Can you?
I think right now they haven't gotten to the point where we've reviewed detention. The note in the staff report was an informational item that'll be discussed at the preliminary.
Okay, this is not final, this is.
No, this is the tentative. We haven't.
But would we have to do a waiver? You're just saying at the point of the, do we have to do a waiver on that now?
No, not right now. No,
not
that'll be a
right now.
preliminary.
Okay, because it was a lot of waivers on there that I do have a problem with. This particular area, and also staff, there was a comment about the oak trees. Do you have, or maybe Paul, do y'all have any information on that? I think I can remember this being part of the entity of the last thing.
We don't have the tree survey. We'll have that at the time that we come back at preliminary, because we'll have to have a detailed topo done of the
Right.
entire site, which will allow us to identify any specimen oak trees. Our intent would be to preserve any specimen oaks that are on the site. That would be referenced on the preliminary plat.
And that would constitute you maybe changing some of the lots?
It could, depending on what we find there, yes, it's through that process.
Because I really don't want to see the trees gone and stuff, and I know it's by law and stuff. I do have some reservations about this particular location, but I understand that where this area is, that and the plans that y'all would like to have larger lots and the lots larger and less of them. But until we could see more, and I think these questions have been raised, that the developer's aware of what we will need at preliminary before we proceed any farther. I'll second Mr. Daugherty's motion.
I have a second by Commissioner Casabon to approve the tentative only with the single waiver. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this is directed to the audience. We're volunteers. We come up here. We're also residents, just like you. And we've got a set of rules we abide by and we have to go through. And sometimes our heart says, I don't want any more development. I've had enough, just like you. But at the same time, we have to respect property values and property rights of others. And when they purchase property that's correctly zoned, we're not saying let's make a commercial operation in the middle of a residence, but when they buy something that's already zoned A4, when they follow all the rules as they're written in the parish, we have to give strong consideration to their rights. When, and I didn't say this group did it, but when someone says, oh, there's trees behind my house and they're going to take the trees down, I'm like, well, you buy the property and keep the trees, but you don't own that property and someone else has rights, and it puts us in a really tough spot. Again, we're residents. In this particular case, my biggest concern is drainage, okay? I think it's one of the big issues we've got to deal with throughout the parish, but to get to that discussion, we have to move past this. When they get into it and they start seeing where the oak trees are, where the drainage issues are, this plan may be totally redesigned, and I encourage you to have community meetings on the subject. But at this stage, we need to support moving it forward. And so we have a motion and a second. I just want you to understand where we come from as commissioners and fellow citizens, that we're faced with a set of rules that we're dealing with, and we can't be arbitrary and just decide we like this subdivision, but we don't like this subdivision. So we will take all this into consideration, and I think you've heard it from all the commissioners before we go to this vote, that drainage will be a major issue that we're going to be dealing with on this at the next stage. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Richard. Any more discussion? We have a motion by Commissioner Doherty to approve tentative with the waiver of the Boulevard, seconded by Commissioner Casabon. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll grant a minute or two just to let people. Please exit the building and close the doors behind you if you're discussing in the freeze. Thank you, officer. Okay. Next, we'll talk preliminary subdivision review. 2018-13-15 BP, Whispering Pines. Developer owner is Robert Hessen. Engineer is Arrow Engineering and Consultant. Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable James Thompson. The general location is on the south side of Joyner-Weimer Road, west of LA Highway 1077, Covington, Louisiana, Ward 1, District 3. This case was postponed for 2 months at the February meeting. Staff, your comments?
Yes, sir. This is Whispering Forest subdivision. The preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and inspection was made of the site. It is recommended that preliminary submittal be approved, subject to the following. Number one, a waiver is being requested for the entrance of the subdivision. The developer has proposed to use a 60-foot wide right-of-way at the entrance instead of the required 80-foot boulevard entrance. Staff is in favor of this proposal due to the layout of the entrance and the width of the existing right-of-way along Joyner-Weimer Road. Additionally, the developer has proposed to relocate his existing drive at the entrance to a location within the subdivision to further improve the safety of this intersection. In order to approve the request, a 2/3 majority vote of the full membership of the commission is needed in pursuant to section 125-224. Number two, provide a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit for this development. Number three, provide a properly signed fill and grading statement for this development. Number four, the water line along Joyner-Weimer Road that Whispering Forest is proposing to tie into has not been approved or constructed. Number five, proposed pond outfall drainage servitude will need to be recorded prior to the final plats being signed. Number six, revise the 35-foot typical access servitude section to include the 10-foot utility servitude and show the servitude on the plat. Provide all St. Tammany Parish and Forest restrictive covenants from Ordinance Chapter 125-124 on the plat. Number eight, revise the downstream ditch elevation table for lot number 2 to 23.50 feet. Number nine, provide an additional plan sheet showing typical sections, providing the hydraulic analysis for the cut and fill calculations. Show on sheet C1 where each section is located with labeled cross sections. Number 10, plans and specifications for the construction of the project's water distribution lines and sewer collection lines have not yet been approved by the Louisiana Department of Health. Number 11, provide written approval from Tammany Utilities of the water and sewer plans for this subdivision. Number 12, the sewer force main along Joyner-Weimer Road will be required to be jack and bored due to limited right-of-way. 13, revise the sewer note to state West St. Tammany sewer system and the water note to state Faubourg-Coquille water system. 14, a street sign is required at the intersection of Whisper Court and Boulevard Lane. Revise the traffic plan to show the sign and update the signage legend. Informational items. A funded maintenance obligation, the amount of $10,000 is required in accordance with St. Tammany Code of Ordinance, Chapter 125. Funded letters of credit for existing parish roads to ensure the repair of any damage to the parish roads resulting from construction in connection with the subdivision. An additional maintenance obligation, the amount of 2,345 linear feet at $5 per linear foot, and one jack and bore at $5,000 per bore, for a total of $16,700, is required for the construction of the sewer line within the Joyner-Weimer Road right-of-way to ensure the repair of any damage to the parish roads from construction activity in connection with the installation of the sewer line. The Department of Public Works will also require a maintenance obligation before a land clearing permit is issued. The amount of this obligation will be established by Public Works upon review of the land clearing permit. Mandatory developmental fees will be required at final submittal in accordance with St. Tammany Code of Ordinance, Part 2, Land Development Code, Chapter 125, since no public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here?
I'm Darrell Fussell with Aero Engineering, 237 Natchez Trace in Covington. And I passed out a little thing, just a response to the comments, just so you can go through them. Then, just by way of information, and you guys are aware of this, this subdivision was approved previously with 13 lots, and then the time period lapsed, and then the wetlands became cost prohibitive, so we redesigned it and reduced the number of lots. And so the waiver that we're asking for now is the same waiver that was granted before. And the reason that the boulevard type entrance is not required is because you can't make a right-hand turn out of the subdivision, and a left-hand turn out of the subdivision would be very limited. Almost everybody's going to be going out to Highway 1077, so that's why we're asking for the waiver. In regards to the core permit, we gave a copy of the wetlands determination to the engineering department, and Hydric in Hammond, Mike Henry is working on the core permit. What's item 3? What was item 3?
Fill and grading statement.
Yeah, we submitted that form to the engineering department.
Okay.
In regards to the water line, you might remember that we came before y'all and asked for a waiver on that water line for the fire hydrants, and we were denied, and we appealed, and we were denied again, and so we've spoken, and when I say we, that's Bruno Management. That's their job with with Wingfield subdivision. So right now, the fire department is working with working to get approval or permission from the landowners to install those fire hydrants on Wingfield. But we anticipate, and also Tim Brown with Tammany Utilities has given us approval to install the water line as the latest plans, which would be for boring the whole way, which would alleviate the issue or most of the issues with the landowners. Number 5 is just a final plat comment. Number 6, that servitude shown on the plat, we just need to add the utility servitude to the servitude detail. The plat covenants, our restricted covenants are almost the same 8 items that are listed in Chapter 125, just a couple of typos that need to be changed. Number 9, the sheet there is really a sheet that just will be supplemental something to our calculations. The engineering department has given approval for our calculations. They don't have a problem with the calculations. They just want to see some supplemental material, so we would give that to them. DHH, we've submitted the plans to DHH. Of course, DHH approved the plans previously when we did the subdivision before. Tammany Utilities, we've been in contact with them. They are in approval of giving us service, but we don't have written approval yet, but we will get that. Number 12, the force main. It is noted on the sewer plan that it will be jack and board. And the water systems, that's just a typo that needs to be addressed on the water plan and the sewer plan to say which system we're tying into, and the name has changed. And then item 14 is just a street sign. So.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody in the audience want to speak in favor of this preliminary or against? Oh, in favor? Yes, sir. Your name and address, please.
My name is Robert Hessen. I live at 12090 Joyner Weimer Road. Obviously, this is something very important to my wife and myself, and I appreciate all the work y'all do and public service. I had a little experience with that when I was younger in my career, and I know how hard it is and what you have to do and what you have to put up with, and the staff has put up with me a couple of times, so I appreciate that. I want to thank you for that. We're simply trying to do what's called a green subdivision. We plan on building 9 net zero homes there. They will have no energy costs, a very small carbon footprint, and we think it'll be a real positive addition to the parish and to the state. And this, why we're simply soliciting this preliminary approval. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If no public concern, any objection to the?
John Martin, 12375 Ark Road. I'm president of the Civic Association. I really appreciate the green building that y'all are looking to do. There's a couple of things that I would like to comment on and have you think about when you're doing this. I've got to say objections, but think about these things. But I really like the idea. One, of course, I'm on the work group on fill and water retention. And if you look at this plat, this would be a perfect plat to keep the topographic of the land alone. If you look how much wetlands there are here, and build these houses on raised foundations. The state has put out a brochure that says a 2,000 square foot house built on a raised foundation that allows any water to go underneath it, and you're not changing the topographic at all, that would pay for the raising in 3.5 years, and you'd actually end up, the owners, saving $37,000 because their FEMA bill would go down that much by having it raised. And this would be an ideal place, and of course, I'm not sure, that would have nothing to do with this. The only comment I have on this is our work group on fill was supposed to meet last night. And I was glad of that, because then we could come in front of y'all and talk about what we're proposing to the council coming up, because we're going to vote on our results of the work group.
Well, Dr. Martin, how is that?
Well,
how is that relational to what we're talking about here for just
exactly.
preliminary?
I'm sorry, I'm going around a tree or something, because it's now on the 15th, and we are talking about fill, and this is a flood zone A, and it would be imperative that if the new ordinance on fill is different than what we have in front of us right now, and it may be on the 15th, that we should perhaps hold on this till the 15th. I didn't want to have to come and ask this because we were supposed to meet last night. But it seems like we would be getting ahead of ourselves if we vote on how agreeing on fill and water and how do you build into all of this. One other comment is I assume that the cul-de-sacs have been approved by the fire department, that they, yeah, I figured that. So that would be the only thing, is we still don't have the work group information for y'all to use when you're approving or not approving something that has this much wetlands in it. That's all. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your concern. Any more discussion? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes. When this particular subdivision, we did grant the size Boulevard. I think that we have scrutinized this particular subdivision in a number of different ways, and it's been tabled, and the staff has done a great job with all of this. I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Willie.
I'm going to second that motion, and I do respect that half of the subdivision is either green space or road. I mean, that's a whole lot. And again, what Dr. Martin said, raised homes would be nice, but I know that's beyond us here. But I'll second the motion.
I have a second by Commissioner Willie. Commissioner Lauren.
Thank you. Just one comment to make real quick. As Commissioner Richard mentioned earlier, we're volunteers and we work by the rules. And we try to abide by them as closely as we can. One of the things that's been a problem to us repeatedly, this is preliminary. Preliminary is going to be followed by final. Please don't bring us a final with this many items left on it, because we've gotten a bunch of those lately and we've had to turn them down when maybe with a little bit of work it could have been avoided. It's just very difficult for us to say something is final when you've got a sheet that's 3 pages long of punch list. Okay? Thank you.
Any more discussion? If not, I have a motion to approve with the waiver by Commissioner Casabon and a second by Commissioner Willie. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next case, 2019-1395 PP, the Preserve at Goodby Lakes. Developer owner D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast. Engineer is Quality Engineering and Surveying. Parish Council District Representative, the Honorable James Thompson. Its location is on the northeast side of LA Highway 1077, east of Tantilla Ranch Road, north of US Highway 190, Covington, Louisiana, Ward 1, District 3. This was postponed 1 month from the March 13th, 2019 meeting. Staff?
Yes, sir. The subdivision plans have been revised to comply with St. Tammany Parish fill ordinances. The preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and an inspection was made of the site on February 27th, 2019. It is recommended that preliminary submittal be approved, subject to the following comments. Comment number 1, Louisiana DOTD approval needs to be provided for the changing of the culvert size and for the pond outfall discharging to the Highway 1077 roadside ditch. Number 2, Louisiana DOTD approval and required permits for the proposed right turn lane of off of Highway 1077 need to be provided. Number 3, the construction access for this development must be from Highway 1077. Tantilla Ranch Road cannot be used as means for construction access. Number 4, a waiver of the 60-foot driveway requirement is being requested for lot number 20 to reduce the distance required to 30 feet. Number 5, the proposed drainage servitude behind lots number 42 through 48 does not meet St. Tammany Parish minimum servitude width requirements. Revised non-conforming servitude to meet minimum servitude width requirements. 6, show outfall drainage servitude for pond number 2 on the preliminary plat. 7, add callouts for all pond overflow weirs to preliminary plat and required plan sheets. 8, a complete plan set must be provided with updated sheet numbers that includes the right turn lane plan sheets. 9, sheet 2 references sheet 6C, but sheet 6C was not included in plan set. Revise reference or provide sheet 6C in the plan set. 10, provide details of proposed drainage structures, pipes, and pipe bedding requirements. Details and LADOTD standards specified in the construction plans must be included in the plan set. 11, revise all plan sheets, remove Great Egret Drive and replace it with Spoonbill Drive. 12, the sheet legend on plan sheets 36 through 41 needs to be revised to eliminate line type discrepancies. 13, add drainage structures B4 and B4.1, including pipe information to the drainage structure summary table B. 14, add drainage structures B2.2 and B2.3, including pipe information to the storm drainage layout plan. 15, multiple conflicts exist between drainage structures E, E1, and E1.1 within the plan set, the drainage impact study, and the storm drainage table E. Revise conflicts and update all applicable documents. 16, subsurface drainage passing through lot number 41 is outside the proposed servitude. Revise servitude and or subsurface drainage so that the subsurface drainage is located within the center of the drainage servitude. 17, subcatchment C3 of the drainage impact study needs to be routed through pond 2C in the model. 18, provide silt fence for lots number 1 through 9 along Cozy Lane to control sediment runoff from the project site. Informational items, no funded maintenance obligation is required since access from a parish maintained road is not allowed. Mandatory developmental fees will be required at final submittal in accordance with St. Tammany Parish Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Land Development Code, Chapter 125, since no public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent the developer D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast. I think you're familiar with this case, not only because we were with you last month, but it first showed up on your docket in June of 2018. And my job this evening is hopefully to present enough new information to you to get you comfortable in recommending preliminary subdivision approval. I think some things of note before I go into the staff comments. We met with staff Thursday before last, March 28th, had a very productive meeting with them. And as a result, I hope that you detect that the substance of these comments are far different than the substance of the comments that you had last month. We appreciate staff listening to our suggestions and helping us formulate solutions, some of which were waiver items and some of which probably just required better engineering practice in terms of trying to comply with code. I'd like to start at the bottom of page 1 because I think this is going to be a recurring theme from those that may come to the podium tonight and speak, and that is, and I quote, "The subdivision plans have been revised to comply with the St. Tammany Parish Fill Ordinance." In that regard, I want to make it abundantly clear, this is a subdivision that years ago started off to be 150 to 200 lots, is now down to 66 lots, and because of approximately 40 of the 75 acres being green or open space, we now meet the current St. Tammany Parish Fill Ordinance in all respects and particulars with no need for waiver, deviation, etc. I feel confident that staff would have commented to the contrary, as they did for many months beginning in June of 2018 until our plan was in fact revised. Number 2, if you will turn to the top of page 2, please note that, of course, staff is now comfortable and has recommended approval of the project subject to concerns and comments. And in that regard, I will tell you that we can live with all 18 of the requested items as is, with 2 exceptions, and I will go through those exceptions. But I would like to stress to you that none of those conditions suggest, in none of those paragraphs does staff suggest that these are untenable conditions. It's just that this requires certain modifications as they read. In particular, I'd like you to look at items 4 and 5, and I've given you a 2-page handout this evening. The top page of that handout addresses item 4. And if you'll remember last month when we were seeking a waiver as it relates to the driveway requirement, there were 9 lots of the 66 that we requested a waiver. We tried, but this month we only have 1 lot, and we simply could not find a way to get it compliant. If you'll take a look at the sketch, you will see that the edge of the driveway is 43 feet to the property line. But I would also ask that you take into consideration, as I know you have in other cases in the past, that there's an additional distance into the Goodby Preserve Lane right-of-way before you actually get to the hard surface of that road. So we believe that there is adequate distance in this instance, both as it relates to safety and also aesthetics, and we do request 1 waiver in this case this evening for the 1 lot 20. If you look at comment number 5, and in fairness to staff, they did not know that we would present the 2nd page of this 2-page exhibit to you this evening. That comment has now been satisfied by our redesign. We do not need a waiver. In particular, if you look behind lots 43 through 48, you will see that the drainage servitude is now 30 feet wide, which is the code requirement for the parish. That was a problem last month. And also, the servitude is no longer within the rear of the lots. It's outside the lots. So in fairness to staff, they didn't see the drawing till this evening. We know that we're going to also have to give them a more detailed drawing as it relates to the width and depth of the swale to make sure that it moves the water in the manner that they want. With that having been said, unless there's a particular item that someone would like me to comment on once you have a chance to ask me questions, we are, again, in full accord with staff comments. We specifically asked for the waiver in number 4, and we suggest that there's no need for anything as it relates to number 5 in light of page 2 of the exhibit I've given you. Last but not least, I anticipate that there will be suggestions made that perhaps the fill plan for this subdivision may not be compliant with the recommendation of the Fill Mitigation Committee that proposes to meet next Monday evening. I would suggest to you two things. I think it's your job to evaluate this case based on the current law, just as staff has done. Number two, I would suggest to you, and I am actually on that committee, although I have not sat at the dais, but I've certainly followed its work closely. This fill plan meets, in my view, the current but strictest requirement or strictest interpretation of the fill ordinance. And I think that if the suggestion is made to you that you should wait for something, I believe as a legal matter that this project, once it's filed, that we're entitled to the benefit of the law at the time we file the case. Otherwise, you could constantly have a moving target. You prepare your plans, you do your engineering, you get into the system, and you find that the law's changed. Well, suddenly, you're obviously disadvantaged at that point. So we believe that, again, we meet the law. I think in all likelihood we will continue to meet the law. But even if the committee makes a recommendation next Monday evening, I want to state again, as I did last month, that is a recommendation to the council. It then has to go through the full legislative process. And I would say with the significance of that issue, it's destined to have a 3 or 4 month journey at a minimum until an ordinance is eventually adopted. The suggestion that this case maybe stay postponed on your docket until some law is passed in the future, to me, not only doesn't make good sense, it's simply not fair to the developer. So with those comments, we ask that you grant preliminary subdivision approval this evening for the preserve. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I have a couple of speaker cards that would like to speak, and I guess, let's see. Mr. Martin, Dr. Martin, would you like to?
I think, excuse me, please, I think Matt wanted to go first, and I'll follow.
Okay. Matt, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Chairman Davis.
Sure.
Yeah, Matthew Allen, 13058 Major Lane, Folsom, Louisiana. And as y'all know, I'm concerned with the Tchefuncte River aspects. I'm a certified floodplain manager. And I really do appreciate everything that Mr. Shane has done for the fill. And y'all come a long way with that. And also, I was noticing in the packet that they changed the language for the servitudes for the drainage to be dedicated to the parish. Am I right in saying that? So thank you for that, too. I think that was a really good move for the whole parish. There's this big elephant in the room that everybody wants to ignore, which is flooding from the Tchefuncte River. Last month, we heard arguments that the drainage study for rainfall that falls on it had been completed and everything had been done. Well, that's all good for the rainfall that falls on the subdivision. But what about the 6, 8, 10 inches of rain that falls up in Washington Parish that comes down and floods the whole area? And as an engineer earlier noted, we know that these base flood elevations are wrong. For the Tchefuncte River at the 190 Bridge, which is the closest gauge to this place, the base flood elevation of 30 feet has been exceeded 5 times in the last 30 years since it was come up with. So we know there's a serious flooding issue here. And I think I made these a little bit too small. I brought a few pictures here. I hope y'all can see these. But this is Tantilla Ranch Road during the 2016 flood. Man standing almost waist deep in water, and they're looking out the back of an Army vehicle, rescue vehicle there. And over here, this is August, which was a whole foot lower, still flooding the whole area and all the roadways. That's a danger to citizens right there. And do we really want to put more citizens there? Also, we've had this argument about rainfall falling on the property and being mitigated with the drainage detention versus the flooding. Back in 2013, we had Prune Creek subdivision that we talked about. And in 2016, while it was being developed, no homes yet, but the infrastructure in, you can't really see them, but you can see sewer pipe, stub outs and electric poles and light poles in 2016. The whole thing flooded. I was accused of making up floods at that point in life. And then just this past December, a moderate flood, 3 feet below base flood elevation, and the water's starting to come up to the houses already, flooding all the streets. Again, a big elephant in the room that everybody's in denial of. And your own ordinances do deal with this to an extent. And it's a mimic of 44 CFR 60.3, which are minimum requirements for the parish to have flood insurance under the NFIP program. And it states, and you heard this again once before tonight, that it requires that until a regulatory floodway is designated, that no new construction, substantial improvements, or other development, including fill, shall be permitted within zones A, 1 through 30, and AE on the community's firm, unless as demonstrated, again, demonstrated, that the cumulative effect of the proposed development, when combined with all other existing and anticipated development, will not increase the water surface elevation of the base flood more than 1 foot at any given point in the community. And St. Tammany Parish has this exact ordinance as 115-70, number 9. That's minimum requirements that y'all have to enforce in order to maintain eligibility for the federal flood insurance program. And this is really big because right next door to this, not even half a mile down, there's a proposed Providence Park with, I want to say it's 200 acres or more or less, with 400 homes. And putting this much fill in this area does stand a chance of raising that base flood elevation. Now, if they build this out to base flood elevation, what happens if all this fill does increase the heights? Because this is not just about storage. This is also about flood flow. The floodwaters flow through here and actually leave the Tchefuncte Basin and go into the Tangipahoa Basin, acting like a Bonacary spillway. I'd like to use a little analogy. I hope all of y'all have been on a water slide before. Lando Pines, maybe you remember Old Money Hill when it was a recreation area with their water slide. You get up there, that water's flowing downhill. But when you get up there, you can hold yourself and put yourself in the way, and that water backs up. It's going around you, yeah, but it still has to back up to get around you. And that's the same type of thing that filling in the flood plains in these areas, where the flood flows, not just on the fringes, stands a chance of raising the flood levels. The water's going to run into that fill, and it's going to have to go up to go around it. And we just want to make sure that the residents who have flooded multiple times don't receive extra water from these developments. So we request that you'll do a proper study of the effects of filling in these areas. I mean, not only do we have this one, Providence Park, we also have the existing ones, several at Countryside. We have, what's that one, Spring Lakes that flooded in 2016. And we still haven't even seen a 500-year flood. The 500-year flood, according to FEMA, is 3 feet higher than the 100-year flood. So, and we haven't ever reached that point yet. So there's a serious issue that needs to be studied and looked at to protect the current citizens of the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Martin, you have 3.5 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you don't mind, would y'all look at the environmental data on the sheet, the environmental data sheet that they fill out on Goodby Lakes? Do y'all have that, the first sheet you fill out on it? That asks if it, does this land flood and things like that? Y'all don't have that with you? Okay. I hope they changed it, because there's a question on it on flooding, and it says, is this land ever inundated? The first one is never, the second one is sometimes, and the third one is yes. And what's circled on this, unless they've gone back and changed it, is that this land never floods. I tell you what, that's chutzpah. This is Zone A, and a good portion of this subdivision is in a flood area. So I'm a little concerned that perhaps they didn't notice that the land floods when they buy it and they're building on it. because I think was their statement when they did, and I hope they have gone back and changed it. My big problem with this, and I've addressed it, I know Jeff and I and the developer met, real nice guy, and the problem is when we're first developing this area, St. Bernard had flooded in Katrina, and there was a moratorium here, and people from St. Bernard were coming up and wanted to build on Tantella Ranch Road. And we said, sure, go ahead and build, but there's going to be a subdivision there. Face your houses in to the subdivision. So initially, their homes on Tantella with the back facing, their homes are facing the woods, and the back of the house faces Tantella. You've got 4 houses here, and if you look at it, you can see that there's a road that allows 9 houses to exit into the subdivision as opposed exiting in onto Tantella. There is another house further north on the north side of Cozy Lane that is in the woods, backs up to the back of the house is against Tantella. There's no road in front of it. So those people are, and we talked about this, there's another strip of houses that are on 1077 that are going to have to empty onto 1077. And originally, when the first subdivision and this was being built, the idea was not to have all these curb cuts on 1077 and Tantella go into the subdivision where the kids can wait for a school bus in a subdivision and not on 1077. This is a little bit of a problem with the design of this particular subdivision, is that has been bypassed, and you've got 5 homes facing into the woods. The back of the houses, the people enter from the back of their house, so you can imagine the back of your house is facing where people come. Got it. And okay. And I think we need to work out something with this developer that allows these houses to empty into the subdivision for the safety, not onto 1077, not onto Tantella that they're doing now. That's it. I appreciate you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you. I'm going to pick up with Dr. Martin's last comment as it relates to Cozy Lane and the lots that are in existence. Those 9 lots are not a part, obviously, of this development, and this developer had nothing to do with those lots. For those of you that have some tenure on the commission, we have discussed this layout in zoning and probably even in tentative, although I don't have a direct recollection of that. The point is I think everyone understands what the conditions are, and that these lots did not have access, and that's the reason that Cozy Lane was developed. There's nothing on this plan to suggest that our traffic is forced out to Tantella Ranch Road. Yes, Tantella Ranch Road is a second outlet, which I think all of us agree is a good thing from a safety standpoint, if nothing else. And yes, it might be more convenient for some of the homeowners that live in that particular area of Cozy Lane to use that access. Again, though, this is a subdivision that has had all of the studies submitted, and the traffic patterns and circulation appear to be adequate and meet the code requirements that you have. I think that most of the comments that I heard this evening from Mr. Allen as it relates to drainage, fill mitigation, detention, flooding, et cetera, all of us respect those comments, and none of us are naive as it relates to the history that some of the properties in the Goodby community and many other communities in our parish have suffered in the past. But I don't think that the fill ordinance or the proposals that are being considered by the work task, I don't think they're the elephant in the room at all. And I think, quite frankly, to suggest that this plan is not code compliant or in fact presents a risk to health, safety, welfare, et cetera, is simply false. And I would even go as far to say as I think it becomes a scare tactic. And I know that's a strong term, but I really believe that. Because, you know, I think about this case, handled a few of them through the years. This one started in June. If we had not radically transformed this project and made special efforts to meet all of the requirements of code, I cannot imagine that the staff report would say the subdivision plans have been revised to comply with the St. Tammany Parish Fill Ordinance. That's a strong statement. If you look at the history of this project and the staff reports that were being generated pursuant to the prior plan. Now, so what do we do with projects like this? I mean, do we depend on what I say in terms of rhetoric, or what residents talk about, or what might have been put on a declaration when an application was filed? They're certainly relevant, but at the end of the day, the issues of fill and drainage, i.e. flooding, have to depend on professional evaluation by the project engineer as submitted to the staff and their evaluation as to whether or not property is code compliant. I've heard a few of you this evening talk to all of us in the room about your job, and your job is to determine if, in fact, people that have property and want to exercise their property rights appear to meet the requirements of law of St. Tammany Parish. I suggest to you that this project, thankfully, now does that. So I think that we're in a great position tonight to say, job well done. It's time for preliminary subdivision approval. I certainly would like you to recommend preliminary subdivision approval, but I strongly urge that no matter what you do, please don't postpone this case this evening. It's time to come off of your docket. Whatever its fate may be, it's time for it to happen, because I think you have other business to tend to, and I know that my client, as it relates to the ownership of this land, wants to find out resolution, if you will, to these issues. Last but not least, I sincerely mean this, staff has worked really closely with the development team in this case. We've had a couple of meetings. We started over here. We've ended up over here. A lot of it's been based on good suggestions. Some of it, quite frankly, was a surrender or sacrifice by my client to end the debate as to how the fill ordinance should be interpreted. This project meets the letter of the law, and for that reason, we ask that you recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. There's 5 minutes rebuttal time.
I really do appreciate Mr. Shane's rhetoric here, but he's confusing issues for y'all. First off, I wasn't talking about the fill ordinance, okay? He complied with it. I agree with that. And that's just a distraction from the real issue of the river that comes down. The Tchefuncte River, above this point, drains over 100 square miles. Imagine how many gallons that is with just a 6-inch rain, all trying to come down and get through that narrow opening at the 190 bridge. That's what causes these floodings. It's not the rainfall that falls on it. The fill ordinance is not the flood hazard area ordinance that we're talking about. And these are minimum requirements set by the federal government. So if by not doing this, you're actually violating federal laws. Not to mention your own ordinances that the feds require you to have and enforce to maintain our FEMA flood insurance. He said all the studies were done and evaluated for drainage, but that's still not the river flooding. That is just the drainage from the rainfall that falls on this 87 acres, not the 100+ square miles above it that all comes down to us. And so I'm going to ask you to deny this until we do have an actual study on the effects of all this development. I mean, we've had a lot of development here in the Goodby area, and there's more to come. There's more anticipated. And all these subdivisions have had these flooding issues. Spring Lake had houses flood in it. You had Gottshaw Road. You had Countryside. People couldn't get in and out of it. Tuscany West had major flooding issues, all the way down to Hidden Creek and Soap and Tallow Creek, houses flooded. Putting fill here where it gets in the way of this water leaving our system to go to another system is not going to reduce flooding. It probably won't even keep it the same. I hope it does, and I hope the studies show it does, because I'm not against development. I'm quite happy that I don't have to drive to Lakeside Mall to do Christmas shopping anymore like when we were kids. But this is a serious issue for the residents that already exist here. And part of the government's job is to make sure that the residents are not harmed by other actions. And that's what this mandatory study is for, to make sure that we're not harmed. Thank you very much.
Very quickly, I appreciate Jeff. That was good. That was good. He actually, that was fine. A couple of things. One, I feel sorry for these people whose houses have been built, particularly the one that doesn't have a road ever going to it. That this man was told that he had to build facing the woods with his garbage can and the cars parked where the front of his house should be. And I was hoping by bringing this up to y'all that perhaps something, we had talked about this at the meeting with Jeff, that these people, particularly the ones along 1077, even though they're not part of the subdivision, the road was put so that their front of the house is facing the road, which faces the subdivision, and not the kids not having to go out onto a major thoroughfare. So that was only the point I was bringing up there. And that's, that's it. I don't know what we can do. I'd love to see somebody say, well, let's build a road and allow these people to get out like they should get out. Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission for their comments. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Yes, I appreciate all the comments, I do. But Mr. Shane makes a good case, and it's the fact. The fact is that we have to comply with what we're governed with today. And it's not fair to tell a developer or a landowner, just wait. Let somebody move something around and maybe you'll comply then. That just doesn't make, we can't do it that way. It doesn't make sense. I do appreciate your concerns, but I'll move for approval.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Commissioner Willie.
I have a question of staff here. The gentleman mentioned about a FEMA regulation that we are supposed to respond to or abide by. How y'all respond to that, the federal regulation he was talking about?
So the regulation he's discussing is when a regulatory floodway is not being designated, the floodplain administrator must require that no new construction, substantial improvements, or other development, including fill, shall be permitted within the flood zone, unless it is demonstrated that the cumulative effect of proposed development, when combined with all other existing and anticipated development, will not increase the water surface elevation of base flood more than 1 foot at any point within the community. So basically, that is the basis of the whole no net fill ordinance, is that we're maintaining the floodplain capacity. So we're not putting any additional fill into the floodplain, and we're not allowing them to put fill in there. That's why they're having to excavate that or provide excavation below the 100-year floodplain for that storm event. And so in addition to that, we do the 25% reduction for these large developments. So we're also reducing the peak rate of flow going to them. And when we look at this, we look at, we look at the channel sizes, we look at the flows, we look at
Or are you
large
looking at the
portion of this.
100 square mile area he was talking about? Does that come into play here? In our calculations?
In a way we interpret and review it, yes. That's part of the reason that it's gone to the parish council, and they're having to mitigate the fill impact and provide the 25% reduction separately.
So it's in y'all's calculations. So, so in your opinion, when you make a recommendation that they are satisfied, the fill and the runoff and the detention and all that, that's all, in your opinion, this developer meets those regs?
When we review what their professional engineer provides and goes through, it's to the best of our knowledge that it does comply with ordinances in the way they're written.
According to those federal regulations I'm talking about.
Federal regulations, that's a FEMA template that has been passed into ordinance that we utilize. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to second the motion.
I have a second by Commissioner Willie. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, I have a couple questions. Well, I guess we can do with staff too. On this particular plat, it's showing that we have 2 ponds or 3? Was it 3 ponds? Anyway, that by using these ponds, is that under the 25% reduction on those surrounding subdivisions like Spring and Tantella Road and all of those areas? Is that going to help with that type flooding? This development would end up helping that.
So this developer is required to reduce
The-
his impact
his
within
impact.
the
Okay, so-
entire parcel he's developing on.
Okay.
So he's not responsible for reducing the flow of other
Other
developments.
communities. But it's not going to impact it because we put these houses there. As far as the houses, they will have their own runoff and stuff. The other thing, I guess, Mr. Allen, could I ask you a question? I've heard flooding, but no one's been able to tell me. Are you, since you're in the little Shafunkta and the Shafunkta River, was any of that desnagged after Katrina?
It really wasn't needed after Katrina around our place. What happens is the river valley is lower than the surrounding landform, so most of the winds blew over it, and the main damage was up outside the river valley.
But it is, my particular area, the bridge I cross every day, there are still large trees that are across that river. And no one's been able to tell me. I know farther up they were desnagged, and I can imagine all the way up. I just would like to know what impact that would have on, damming up that river and it going out into the other areas and
I have
stuff.
covered that whole river from Bennett Bridge Road all the way down to Madisonville. I can tell you it's 12 hours by canoe from 190 to Madisonville. And I've never seen a dam on that river.
Okay.
An individual log is not going to cause the major flooding that we have. The flood basin is so wide that just the individual
that.
logs in there
Okay.
have a minimal impact. And there's been no raising or silting in of the river up there or anything else.
I feel like, thank you, I knew you were familiar with that area and stuff. I concur that this particular developer, I was not for this at all when it was the 156 houses. We were like scared to death of it and said absolutely no way that they would fit in because we had so much wetlands. I think this has been reduced to the fact that the developer has made concessions and we're looking at a much, smaller envelope that I'll concur with the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Darty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing, and maybe I misunderstood what was said, but some of the surrounding subdivisions, particularly those downstream from this subdivision that Mr. Shane's talking about on the D.R. Horton, this 25% reduction of the pre-development runoff is going to help any of those subdivisions that are downstream. Is that correct? Staff?
It's going to reduce the rate the water leaves the subdivision.
Right, which should help the downstream subdivisions because we're retaining 25% that would today go into those subdivisions, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure that I understood the program.
Okay, we have a motion to approve with the waiver for the 60-foot clearance from lot number 20, is that correct? By Commissioner Fitzmaurice, with a second by Commissioner Willie. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And just another note, I truly appreciate Dr. Martin and Mr. Allen coming up here, and you have a zest for this information, and keep going with this. And I hope that once you're finished with this overall review and investigation of this, it will definitely help the parish. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. There is a difference between rainwater and flood, and that was.
Yes.
I'm just a big nerd.
It's unfortunately, we live in Louisiana, and I'll tell you why.
Yes, sir.
Everything flows south,
Yes, sir.
and we're at the end.
Yes, sir. We are.
Thank
You
you
know.
for your time. I don't envy your position.
Okay, let's see, okay, 2019-1426, PP, Lakeshore Villages Phase 3B. Developer owner D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast, engineer surveyor, Duplantis Design Group, PC Acadia Land Surveying LLC, Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable Michelle Blanchard. General location is located north of Oak Harbor Boulevard, west of LA Highway 433, east of Interstate 10, Slidell, Louisiana, Ward 9, District 13. Staff?
The preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office, and inspection was made of the site on March 28, 2019. It is recommended that preliminary submittal be approved.
Jeff Shane, Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, representing D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast. Please grant preliminary subdivision approval for this subdivision in accordance with staff comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? If not, I'll return it to the commission. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Jeff, I must be missing a page. There's nothing. Kudos to you, congratulations. At preliminary, not one comment. I move for approval.
That's a motion to approve by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Commissioner Darty.
I will second.
I have a second by Commissioner Darty. Any more discussion? If not, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay. No final subdivision reviews, no amendments to the Chapter 125 subdivision regulations. We've already done old business. Is there any new business? No new business? Motion, anybody get a motion to adjourn? Thank you. What's that?
We need to make sure the short-term housing, you think this room is full?